uh, emphasize that science, engineering, technology, and innovation have sort of long been realized as major driver for economic development and prosperity across the world. The human civilization has transcended to a wisdom and a knowledge-based era for which the foundations were already laid by the ancient civilizations uh, across the course of the human history. In modern times, no development can progress without employing and using technology, may it be agriculture, industry, environment, education, health, and so on. Information and communication technologies or ICTs, including data science, artificial intelligence, and computing, play a major role in every sector and are considered as a must for development of any country or region, including the ECO region or the network of Belt and Road countries. In many countries, accurate information, adequate indicators, and capacities to analyze and monitor the STI or SETI policies, their implementation, and the policy instruments are rather lacking. Policymakers therefore need to have a better picture of their national, regional, um, and global performance with regard to SETI and have a better understanding of the long-term evolution of their STI structures and governance characteristics. They need to be able to identify and fill the missing gaps in terms of STI policy instruments that ensure effective implementation of their policies and strategies in place. Various emerging and enabling technologies like nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, robotics, etc., are technologies of today and of the future. Over the past few years, there have been amazing advancements in such fields through intersectoral cooperation and collaboration. Hence, it is important to invest on creating infrastructure and declaring nodes of excellence within the country pertaining to emerging technologies, and also to explore mutual ways of collaboration, not just within country, but beyond. And we are talking about the Belt and Road member countries. Scientific advancement and innovation are major sources of economic growth and are crucial for making social and environmental development sustainable. I truly believe that science, engineering, technology, and innovation play a critical role in providing policy instruments that are essential to develop a strong base of countries for boosting socioeconomic growth and sustainable development. And we have seen many developed nations, as mentioned by Khalil, who have made great economic progress due to their well-structured science, technology, innovation policies. Therefore, SETI or STI policies have shaped the world as it is today. And it is therefore vital to deliberate on the adequate framework and strategies to develop the SETI policies as powerful governing tools, which can reshape and alter the course of direction towards high economic growth trajectory for the Belt and Road countries. We know that Belt and Road Initiative of China commits to foster industrial development with the strong technical cooperation in many fields, including the infrastructure development, digital transformation, emerging technologies, and smart cities, sustainable energy and transport, etc. But to achieve these massive goals, it requires a robust commitment to support science, engineering, including human resource development,
Hello?
My apologies. I think we have lost Professor Sumro, President Sumro, thank you so much for highlighting that STI is critical to the success of the Belt and Road Initiative. Um, I hope that Professor Sumro would join back us again. And meanwhile, I can begin and invite to my first expert, that is Professor Dr. B. Liang Lang, Associate Researcher at the Institute of International Science and Technology Relations at the Chinese Academy of Science and Technology for Development. Dr. B. Liang, she has been engaged in research on international science technology policies, regional innovation system development, and special distribution of science technology resources. She has presided and participated in nearly 20 national level scientific research projects and major research tasks of the Ministry of Science Technology at China, with the focus on participating in a number of national major S&T special projects. She has authored and compiled over 16 books, published nearly 50 articles in important domestic and foreign journals. She has also served as the second secretary of the Chinese Embassy in India of the Science and Technology Division. Professor Dr. B. Liang, over to you.
Okay, hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And it's my honor to join this, the fourth joint training program, and as one of the presenter. And now I will share my screen and wait a minute. Yeah, this is my slides, and okay, I will begin my presentation. The topic of my presentation is a policy framework for STI in national high-tech zones of China. And there are four items in my presentation. The first is the quick review of the global science park. The second part is the China science parks. The third is the international cooperation of science parks around the world. The fourth is the suggestions for the Belt and Road countries to develop their own science park. Okay, let's begin. This part is the short review of the science parks date back to the Stanford Research Park. As we all know, that since 1956, we have begun, the world has begun to build the science park, beginning from the University of Stanford, who has built the Silicon Valley, which is very famous of the world. And since then, in the 1957, and USSR and has built the science city of Novosibirsk. And in the 1959, US has built the Boston Route 128, which is also very famous. And since then, also Japan, France, UK has built their own science park. And on the right part is the escalation in the developed world, whose beginning stage of the science park building. And on the left part is the first one, which I have mentioned, is the Stanford Research Park. So you can see all the history. It's a short history of the science park of the world. And later then, the expansion into developing emerging market countries, since 1976, Indonesia, and then Brazil, and then China has built the science park, national park. We can see on the left is some red dots. It express the locations of the science park. Also, has emerged in the developing countries. On the right, we can see in a in the 90s, India, Poland, and Lithuania, also Iran, Thailand, Oman, Indonesia has developed their own science park and science city. This slide is about the emergence of the science parks according to region and time. We can see on the left, the chart, there's the years, the time. You can see from the 1950s to the 2010s. And on the right, there's the places like North America, Oceania, South Asia, East Asia, Africa, and South America. You can see that there's a number 67 was emerged in 1980s, and there's a lot of science park emerged. And then this is the number. You can see how the science parks developed in the whole world. And also this slide shows the who is the most investor of the parks. So the title is the government is the #1 driving force for the science park. We can see that there's numbers of 15, which showed the managing company and the private and a public and private partnership. This crossover is the most account for the method of how the driving force for the science park. And also we can see East and Southeast Asian science parks cooperate more with China. This bar chart shows the cooperation with China. The dark brown is yes. So we can see that the Southeast and the South Asia has cooperated the most science park with China, and also the Western Europe, also the East Asia. So this is a brief review of the global science parks development. And the second part is the main topic of today that I want to give is about the China science parks development history, achievements, and the lessons. So the development of national high-tech zones, which is NHZ for short in China. We began to build our own science park in 1988, and the Chinese State Council determined that the development of NHZ is an important part of China's Torch program. So Torch program is very famous in China, and which has supported most of the science parks in different levels, not only the national level, but also the province and the city level. So at present, China has 196 NHZ and around 50 provincial ones. So we have been built science parks in different levels. So this is the number, and we begin from 1988, and in 1991 to 1992, there are 51 NHZ has been built, and to 2018, there's the total number of NHZ has reached 196. Also, okay, let's see the map on the left part. This is the location of the science park in China. We can see that most of them concentrated in the east part, that is 67, and in the central China is 37, and on about the West China is 36, and the northeast of China is 16. It's very obvious that in the map, the most of them are assembled on the East China. It's along the coastline, and also the NHZ has gathered innovation and entrepreneurship resources, we can see from the data that there's business incubators has account for 52%, and the co-working spaces account for 43%. And also we have large number of university science parks which take part the 47% of the, I mean, all of this data is the account, the number of the whole country. So it takes a great part of the whole data of the country. And also you can see the 71% of the national labs are located in the NHC, and also the 83% of the national engineering centers located there. Also 68% of the national tech centers and 67% of the national engineering lab. Also, there's another important data. In 1917, NHC had 386,000 newly registered companies and an annual growth of 34%. We have the Gazelle company, Unicorn company, and there's 81 internet companies listed in the top 100 internet companies in China. So it takes a great important part in China's economic growth. Also, NHZ has contributed to Chinese economic significance. We can see over the 30 years, NHZ has become an important pillar of Chinese economy. So the red label is the signal of the Torch program. So it's very like fire. So on the right part, there is the data which contributed by NHC. You can see the GDP take part of the 11%, and also the last number is the R&D expenditure of the science. NHC has occupied the 50% of the total R&D of the whole country. And this is some numbers, and so there's 3 items that we can conclude from the achievement that NHZ has contributed to Chinese economic. And the first is gathering the scientific and technological resources. We can see that the corporate R&D spending in NHZ was accounting for 50% of the national corporate R&D, and the R&D input intensity was 60.7%, which is 3 times of national average. And also there's 91 million employees in NHZ in total. The college degree employee and high-tech zones accounted for 57%. Also, it's developed enterprises. Yes, we can see there's some data of 190,000 newly registered enterprise in 2015, and we have a lot of incubators, and also the listed companies, and the income of 10 companies more than 100 billion RMB, the income of 362 companies more than 10 billion RMB, the income of 20,000, more than 20,000 companies more than 100 million RMB. Also, the NHC has deepening the reform. We have the marketization, socialization, and specialization service institute and operation agency, and building the service-oriented government, simplify the enterprise registration procedures. Okay, the characteristics of China's science parks are three characters. The first is the innovation. The second is the industry. And the third is in the habitation. About the innovation, we focus on high-end innovative resources, nurturing endogenous development momentum, breakthrough the core technology, and improve the ability of independent innovation, encourage innovation and entrepreneurship. By the industry, gathering the high-end industrial resources, formation of high-tech industry layout, vigorously develop the strategic emerging industries, and actively cultivate modern service industry. Also about inhabitation, regional distribution of industrial, commercial, residential, research and development areas, establishing the hospitals, school, and the gymnasium and other related urban service elements. Yeah, that's what we have done for the development of NHC. Okay, let's come to the lessons from China's science parks. We can see there are four main elements. Okay, the first one is the NHC as an important part of a national strategy. Okay, about the second one is the sorry, is there any problem, or I can hear some noise from my earphone? Yes. Okay, I'll go on. The second element is the financially self-dependent. The third one is the test before scaling up. The fourth one is the local government as a management bodies. For the first one, for the strategy, we have laws, master plans, policies, and approved by State Council as a national initiative. That's very, very important to carry out the whole plan and whole construction of the NHC. About the financially self-dependent, we have so many policies, special policies for NHC, including the free allocation of land, taxation, and the fiscal right. And for the test before scaling up, yes, indeed, we didn't carry out to a great scale at the first time, but we have early NHC as a pilot project and test some new policies. And then we gradually scaling up to other regions. So for the fourth one is the local government as a management bodies. The management committees as an agency of the local municipal authority responsible for the administrative affairs and also policy incentives to boost the development. So these four elements are very important. So now let's come to the operational mechanism of the NHC. You can see the framework of how we carry out all the strategies and all the implementations. So from the top, there is the State Council, and the State Council empower the strategy to the Ministry of Science and Technology. And then we can see there's different levels, and then to the local government. Also the Torch Center, which carry out the Torch program I mentioned before. And also the Provincial Science and Technology Department, who is in charge of the implement policy and support development. And for the environment, there is a centralized management and also the business guidance from the Ministry of Science and Technology. Okay, we can see at the bottom is the specific management of a high-tech zone administrative committee. So that's the whole framework of the NHC that we carry out the program. And the policy evolution of NHC is as following. Yes, hello, is there any problem? Okay, I'll keep on. This is 3 stages for us to develop gradually. The first stage is stage 1, is the initial stage from 1988 to 2000. In this stage, we are advancing the development of high-tech zones systematically, and also attracting investment and the enterprise through land development and preferential tax policies. And in the stage 2 is the second period of the development, which just during the 2001 and 2010, we start the endogenous development guided by 5 changes, exploring classification guidance and characteristic development paths through the launching 3 types of parks. Okay, and building national innovation model area and upgrading provincial parks to national ones. Okay, we have this as the characteristic of the second stage. In the third stage is the strategy upgrading stage. It's from the 2011 until now. We have the innovation-driven strategy of high-tech zones becomes a national strategy, and proceeding the institutional mechanism reform, and also forming the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem, and entering into a phase of overall internationalization. So that's the different stage, and we have different importance in different stage. Okay, let's conclude the key experience of China's NHZ. The first is the we have to establish an effective administration scheme, which includes the leading level, the managing level, and the servicing level. And the China NHZ have set up a management committees that play the role of a dispatched office of the local government. Management committees have economic management authorities and part of administrative functions. The second is to establish the local industry support policy. We have preferential land lease price and the local financial award policy, full-time investment attraction institution, and the government guidance fund. The third key experience is to formulate fiscal and taxation supporting policy. From 1991, if an enterprise in the high-tech zone is identified as a high-tech enterprise, its income tax rate will be reduced to 15%. And also we can see if export product output value reached more than 70% of the total output value, the income tax will be reduced to 10%. And also we can see the bank can issue the long-term bonds to high-tech zones. So there is so many familiar fiscal policies. The fourth is to improve research and innovation service system. We can see that in 2015, we have a lot of technology business incubator and national university science parks and the technology transfer agency, product inspection testing institutions, and the state key laboratory research institute, industrial technology research institute, and postdoctoral workstation, universities, and the National Engineering Research Center. So they are all the important elements for the NHZ system. So the fifth element is to the fifth key experience is to attract and gather talent. We have among the total 20 million employees in NHZ in 2018, and 80% personnel engaged in scientific and technological activities, and the returned overseas students amount to 109,000. and foreign employees numbered is the number of 55,000, among which 13,000 are experts. So this is the whole picture of the Zhongguancun Science Park. I think most of you might have noticed that Zhongguancun is very famous in China because it's located in Beijing, and it is the most incentive scientific education and talent resource base in China. So it's the first science park in China and located in Beijing. If you have a chance to come to Beijing and to join the program, training program next year or some, if possible, I suggest that you pay a visit to Zhongguancun. And this is the development process of Zhongguancun from 1980s to 1990s and 2000 and after 2010s. So there's also, I have listed some both policy reforms and face characteristics and representative enterprises as below. We can see we have import the Microsoft, IBM, and Siemens in 1990s. And also in 2010, we have set up an internationalized innovation ecosystem that we have built, or we have the international enterprises incubate so many prices from our own. So this is the gradual age of the, it's the process of the Zhongguancun. Now I will play a video about Zhongguancun Science Park. Okay. Well, wait a minute. Oh, sorry. My colleague told me that there is no voice of the video, but I'm sorry, I don't know why. So just please take a mute video. Indeed, this is introduction of Zhongguancun Science Park, and so that is some concept of how it works, and there are some interviews. Yes, interview some participants who has built their own enterprises in Zhongguancun. You can see this is the CEO, Lei Jun, yes, CEO of Xiaomi. Yeah, he just started his company, his career in Zhongguancun Science Park. And Xiaomi has been an international enterprise now. So Zhongguancun's ideal is to become the world Zhongguancun, but not only in China. Yeah. this is the enterprises in the Zhongguancun area. Okay. So this is the introduction of the angel investment. This is what they have built in the incubator. So incubator is one part of the NHG. So this is the introduction of the unicorns and the listed companies. Yes, sorry, that will be the end of this video. I'm sorry, maybe some technique default, and I'm sorry for the silence of the video. Okay, let's keep on my slides as the time limited. This part is the international cooperation. Just in this part, I will give a review of the cooperation of NHG of China, motivates for international cooperation of Science Park. And now there's a international division of labor and cooperation of industry and internationalization of companies and organizations and transborder flows of productive elements and open and collaborative innovation. So we have there's the background of the international cooperation of Science Park. And we now have the global organizations of science parks, namely the IASP, as listed on the right part, and also the regional organizations as ASPA and other organizations, alliance of world first class science parks. So they are all very famous organizations. And for China and Malaysia and Chengdu and the Soviet partnerships, we can see the NHG has of China has connected to the world and also cooperate a lot. This picture, we can see it more clearly that with the Thailand and South Africa, Iran, Indonesia, Mongolia, and Bulgaria and Egypt, we have so many like signed MOU or has co-built the the science park together. However, the intergovernmental cooperation on SPE has proved to be inefficient, I have to say, on all stages except for exchanges and plannings. And reaching a consensus is the first challenge to confront, like understanding and conception and cooperation mode and cooperation content. So including the connotation, vision, and goal, and co-development and the policy research development plan and the resource linkage. So there's so many opportunities for the future that we cooperate together. And an entire process to go throughout the different stages, this is the different stages of cooperation of science parks. We can beginning from the planning and also with this construction and the operation. So it's a long period for the cooperation. Also, I listed the ways of the cooperation. Okay, the fourth part is the suggestions for the Belt and Road countries to build the science parks. So learning from the China's experience and of TORCH program that I mentioned at the beginning that we have carried out since 1988. Indeed, for the national high-tech zones, there's 4 parts for construction the science park. The first is a national high-tech zone. The second is a technology business incubator. The third one is a technology transfer. And the fourth is a high-tech enterprises. So we have to carry out and set up a plan and the strategies for all of this part is very important. So for the science park, we have to we suggest that to establish the National Specialized Agency, which is responsible for the development planning, business guidance, and the policy support and implementation of the science park. Each technology park should establish special administrative organizations or management company to be responsible for the service and operation of the park. And the third is the S&T park should not only focus on the function of innovation, but also pay attention to the function of the incubation and industrial development. The fourth is make strategic planning and industrial planning for the park's development, and make planning periodically according to different development stages. And for the technology business incubator, there's 4 items. The first one is a build incubation carriers, provide preferential treatments for business incubators, encourage the establishment of the professional incubators to provide a targeted service for the startups in key areas. And in addition to low cost space, incubators should also provide startups with high level entrepreneurship services. And the fourth is the government should provide fiscal support to providing angel investment or guiding social capital to provide angel investment in startups to fill in the gap in the financial market. Okay, for the technology market, the first is establishing a national technology trading market. The second is providing the tax incentive or exemption policies to enterprises engage in technology development, transfer, consulting, and services. The third one is the continuing to optimize the relevant policies and regulations for the scientific and technological achievements, which are supported by public funds, and the transferred to enterprises and the social service. For the high-tech enterprises, we suggest that to give special preferential policies to high-tech enterprises, such as tax incentives and loan with subsidized loan, and set up special funds to support the development of high-tech enterprises, and pay close attention to gazelle and unicorn enterprises, and work out special policy to support these high-growth enterprises. Okay, this picture is about the new economy area of today. I can see that digital economy and the intelligent economy is coming, and we are in the new economy era. So the new technologies, models, organizations, and industries, and business and values are totally different than before, and we can we have to focus on the IoT and AI and some new social economics formation since today. And also, this is the suggestion of the specific industries. So due to the time limited, I have to quick pass all this part. But there's two key points. Is digital industrialization and the industrial digitalization. So these two concepts are very important for today, and the data becomes the core production element, and the digital technology becomes the source of innovation, and digital infrastructure becomes the new infrastructure. So this is all the new coming changes for today's that we have to pay more attention on this. This is also the construction of digital park, drive digital economy. So this is what we have to do in the future to adapt to the digital economy. Okay, the last, I'd like to add more information about COSF, where I and my colleague, Dr. Lian, come from. Okay. COSF, the whole name. The name is the Chinese Academy of Science and Technology for Development. You can check us from the website en.casted.org.cn. Okay, COSF is devoted to meeting the demand of decision making and STI development and reform, and we are belong to Ministry of Science and Technology, and COSF. We are now listed in the China Top Think Tank. So I and my colleague Li Yan is from the Institute of International Science and Technological Relations. And we are very glad to join this meeting today. And also we are running a UNESCO Category 2 center named CISTRAT. There's on the right part, we are, the whole name is the International Research and Training Center for Science and Technology Strategies. And also we also held the training program every year, and we have established this CISTRAT since 2012, and every year we also have the training program. Okay, I will speed up. And this is the achievements of COSF. We can see there's on the left, we have two journals, which the first one is the Forum on Science and Technology in China. The second one is China Sci Technology Business. And also we have some report. And you can see I have listed on the right. It's a China Regional STI Evaluation Report and about the AI and ecosystem. And also we have the joint publish the books with OECD and WIPO. So I have listed the name at the bottom of the slides. And also we have the international cooperation platform with UK, with US, and Korea, and so many ASEAN countries. Yes, and also Belt and Road institutions and universities, and we have built the Belt and Road STI think tank network that I welcome all of you can join us. And we have the conference in Shanghai every year in May. So next year, maybe if you are interested in our conference, you can connect me, and I will list my email at the last slide. I'll finish this soon. Also, I'd like to introduce our partner, GEI. Is a Great Wall Strategy Consultant. The website is global.gei.com.cn. You can check. GEI has a lot of partners in the whole world, also with the with the science park in US and Indonesia and Brazil, Pakistan and Egypt and in India. So thank you for your attention. Sorry for the over time.
Thank you, Dr. B. Liang Yang,
Yeah.
for your insightful presentation and highlighting how science technology parks, including high-tech zones, have contributed to the economic growth of China. Indeed, science technology, parks are important instrument of broad science technology policy. So what we have got lesson from China's high-tech zone from your presentation is that the China's high-tech zones or the science technology policy or programs have a robust support from the government of China in terms of applicable laws and policies. Second, that you encourage pilot programs first before scaling up the actual programs. Second and third is the provision of adequate financial incentives, that you provide adequate tax breaks for enterprises located in the high technology zones. And one of the major outcome was that the government is a key driver and support of setting up the science park. So we'll have a further discussion during the Q&A, and I'll go to the next speaker, Dr. Li Yan. Dr. Li Yan is PhD in economics, associate researcher of Chinese Academy of Science Technology for Development. His main research direction is international scientific and technological relationships, including German and EU scientific technology policy. So he's going to present on China's science technology reforms. Over to you, Professor Li. Professor Li, you have to unmute, please.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, okay. Let me share my slide first. Right, okay. Yes. 在哪儿了？我这是蓝的这个。点我这里啊。Okay. Now, can you see my slide?
Yes,
Hello?
we do.
Yeah, you do. Okay, good. Now, so my name is Li Yan. I'm also from CASTED, and you just heard my colleague, Dr. B. Liang has given her thoughts on ST zones, and my topic would be China's ST system reform, the latest. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the word reform, because for me, reform is a rather massive jargon, in the Chinese context, because there are just so many areas of reform. Because in China, reform is put in the context of constantly correcting and improving the system of a particular area. For example, we have economic system reform, we have educational system reform, we have cultural system reform, social system reform, or even political system reform. So for me, reform is an overarching and umbrella term that covers many areas in China's social and political and economic life. But today, I want to focus on science and technology. I will refer to that as ST, to be convenient. So ST system reform is just one of the many fields of China's reforms. And within ST system reform, there are many themes as well, such as ST plans and programs, ST enterprise, and ST funding, ST personnel, ST evaluation, and ST international cooperation. I have put ST funding and ST evaluation in red because these are the two themes that I want to cover with more details. Because just recently, in August, the Chinese central government published two latest documents addressing ST funding and ST evaluation. So I think it's a perfect time to give you the latest trend, in China's ST system reform. So let's have a look at the bodies in China's ST system first. As I told you, it's a massive issue, and it consists of so many players and bodies. So I want to have you a general idea what those bodies are in this system. So at the political level, you have the State Council, you have the leading group on ST and education, as well as Office for the Implementation of Reforms and Interministerial Conference. So decisions made at this level are mostly political. They wouldn't go to details to decide how much funding we should give to basic research, how many enterprises we should cultivate. So to give you a general idea that where we're going, in terms of ST system reform, and these decisions are made by the top leaders of China. And further down that level is ministries and organizations. I think the leading ministry at this level would be MOST, which is Ministry of Science and Technology. But other than MOST, we've also got NDRC, is a comprehensive commission in China, and the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security, as well as Ministry of Agriculture and the State Intellectual Property Office. So any bodies, any departments which are relevant to the topic of ST would be at this level, and they tend to issue policies from their own perspective to address specific issues relevant to ST system reform. And further down, we have program level, which means the Chinese ST resources are put into the forms of programs, in particular funding programs. So in 2015, China streamlined its formerly scattered and sporadic old system to streamline into 5 broad categories. That's a very keystone reform, in my opinion, because with that, the old scattered programs are much simpler, than the old one. And at the bottom of this system, you have the real performers, like universities, research institutes, and enterprises. So they are the real carrier and conductor of China's ST activities. So they are, you can imagine, they do the frontline research, and they receive the money, and they produce ST achievements. I'm going to explain what ST achievement is at later, to tell you what it means in Chinese context. But this is a whole picture of how China's ST system look like, because it's a giant, as I told you, and it's massive, and it consists of so many players. Because without knowing the structure, you may find it's difficult and challenging, to understand what reform really means, in China. So in terms of the timeline, China actually initiated its ST reform at a very early stage, right after the founding of the People's Republic in the 1950s, when Chairman Mao was still in charge of almost everything in China. So he proposed something called March Towards Science. So China was a really poor country back then, and basically the whole system of China's ST system was copied from that of Soviet Union. So he realized in the long run, we've got to develop science and technology to rejuvenate China as a young country. And in 1978, when Mao died, Deng Xiaoping came to power, and he somehow introduced the idea of ST are the primary productive force, because during the Mao era, there was a bit of struggle between different classes and ideologies. So the intellectuals in China had some difficult time, and later in Deng Xiaoping's area, their status and their contribution were kind of recognized by the new leader. So are their contribution to the economy. And then since 1985 and all through the way to 1992, to 2012, when the current President Xi Jinping came to power, different leaders of different generations have all proposed their own general direction or slogan in terms of ST system reform. So you can have a look. If you go looking back, you can see there is a clear progression of ideas from the very beginning, march towards science, the very latest to implement the strategy of innovation-driven development. So the idea of STI has been expanding too. It began with science, but it gradually expanded to the area of innovation and recognized that innovation is a key to develop the country in the long run. I can think of no better ways to depict a picture of China's ST reform than quoting a general document which was published in 2015, because the name of the document is called Implementation Plan of ST System Reform. Basically, it's like a checkbook for all the areas, all the measures, okay, covering 143 topics for China's ST reform. I can, of course, not go through into details of those different measures, but what I can do is to give you the general directions, okay, of the reform, and in which direction and what are the topics that China emphasizes in the context of ST system reform. So first, market-oriented mechanism of technological innovation. Basically, it's about enterprise. So with the planned economy, which was before the opening up and reform policy period, I wouldn't say most, I think even 100% of the research work was conducted by state-owned research institutes in China. So enterprise back then was solely responsible for producing and manufacturing goods in China. So there is a clear division and a gap between researchers and manufacturers and workers. So all through the years, okay, China has been making a really good effort, okay, in putting emphasis on the role of enterprises to really place enterprises at the center for technological innovation. So that is the first direction, and to realize that goal, policies like R&D tax credits and to include more entrepreneurs in ST planning and to design more ST programs with the leadership of enterprises are introduced, and they have been taking effect, okay, for the past several years. So through those measures, okay, China's ST enterprises have snowballed. Okay, they grow in number massively, and nowadays, if you look at the total amount of R&D spent, in China, expenditure in China, R&D that from the enterprises is the majority of that total amount of money, and we can see that is the result of this policy and this direction. And secondly, a more efficient scientific research system. That direction addresses the problem of the efficiency in the research system. When it comes to when I say research system, I mostly mean those research institutes and the universities. So basically, those public agencies which are not enterprises, which are non-profit, but they are funded mostly by the government, by the country, to do research, but not innovation. So if you look at research and innovation from the perspective of innovation chain, okay, they are at the earliest stage of that innovation chain. So they should be more efficient and more excellent in terms of producing the results of research. And personnel cultivation, that addresses a person. Okay, how do you cultivate and develop people with creative thinking? How do you classify personnel evaluation? And how do you kind of establish a awarding system that is much more sponsored by society rather than by the government itself? That's about ST personnel. and transformation of ST achievement. This is the topic I want to put more emphasis on today, because in the Chinese context, ST achievement has a special meaning, because we see ST achievements as those results or those outcome from ST activities that are sponsored and funded by state-owned enterprise, state-owned research institutes or universities. Basically, you are using public resources to produce those ST achievements. The way we call them achievements is because they haven't yielded the economic value yet. So they are there to be transformed and to be turned into real economic effect. Okay, this is something I will address later. And combination of technology and finance, which means the linkage between the capital market and the technology. I think the latest news is that China has just established the third capital market in Beijing. Okay, in the past, China only had Shanghai and Shenzhen, two stock market. So the opening of the Beijing stock market is the latest effort in kind of redirecting the financial resources in the market towards ST and innovation. And innovation governance, this is about coordination among different ministries. As I've just introduced, you can see there are many ministerial level departments, and among them there is not always coherence and coordination. Okay, sometimes their interests conflict, and there is a huge amount of work, okay, to be done in terms of coordinating different priorities and to put the effort, from them into the same direction. That is called governance. That open innovation mainly refers to the open ST program to foreign experts and the technical immigration. So far, China's ST programs are overwhelmingly for Chinese researchers. Unlike the US, ST programs is much more internationalized, which means they try to attract worldwide talents, okay, to do research, okay, in the US or outside the US, but with the resources of the US, but to contribute to the US. But China is much more closed, okay, from our own perspective. So we think we should open the ST programs to more foreign experts, to bring in more foreign experts to contribute to China, and we call it open innovation to be one of the directions in ST system reform. And innovation ecology, that mainly address the institutional environment. For example, to break a monopoly in the market and to build more maker space for young entrepreneurs to have a place, to have a physical place where they can realize their dreams, where they can set up their own businesses with subsidized rented, say premise like that. And in the end, the regional innovation reform, because any reform in China, if you want to really implement such a reform, usually the logic is to test it at local level. So China has introduced a policy called all-around innovation reform experimental zone. So to test those policies and to see their effectiveness, if they're effective and if they produce good results, then they could be extended to other regional areas, in China. So to sum up, these 9 directions, I call them directions because they are not specific policies. They cover 143 measures. Okay, if you are interested, you can check it out one by one by downloading and going to the website of those this program, this policy document. But they give you the general idea that where you can see where the ship, okay, of China's ST system reform is going. Okay, this is the direction it is going to. And today I want to particularly introduce to you 2 guidelines, okay, that were introduced as the latest move from the central government level to reform China's ST system. One is about evaluation, the other one is about funding. these two themes in the context of ST are both critical issues, because if you think of evaluation, okay, it's about motivation. So if you are a researcher, how are you evaluated? How are your achievements evaluated? How is it graded, okay, by either the government or by the market? Will have a big impact on your motivation. Okay, so that system, okay, in China is somehow outdated according to the policy, and has to be reformed. And the other topic is the funding, okay, because ST or research is an expensive business, okay, to buy a giant equipment, okay, to carry out experiments and to invite researchers, to recruit personnel. They all cost money. So how do we use this money more effectively, or in a better way, is a critical issue. But the guideline is referring to the funding at central level. I will tell you later that in terms of funding, they are actually at different levels, and we do differentiate central budgetary funding and local government research funding. So let's begin with the first one, evaluation. The full name is called Guidelines to Improve Scientific Technological Achievements Evaluation System. This document was published in August the 2nd, 2021. It has just taken effect recently. The reason why it is called evaluation guideline is because it's from the central government. So the logic is central government gives the guideline, and local governments and universities or different ministries, they will give specific or thematic implementation plan according to this guideline. Okay, basically that is how the central leadership in China govern the country. Okay, they give a central line, and there will be a system of implementation plans which are made according to the guidelines. So down from one level to another level. So the whole system, the whole country will be governed, okay, by those documents. So let's look at what are the content in this guideline. So first of all, you've got to understand in the Chinese context, ST achievements evaluation is like a conductor's baton. Okay, we have a vivid analogy for that. It's like an orchestra. So the conductor uses the baton to tell those musicians that where they should go and what kind of music they should play. Okay, the achievement evaluation is like that baton that gives people directions. And for a long time, we've been having a problem of publish or perish problem. Maybe you have heard about this term that in a university or for intellectual in China, in particular in university, if you do not publish, or if you do not publish enough, okay, within a certain period of time, you may have to perish. Okay, you may not be judged well, okay, by your university or by your peers. Okay, so it's there has been a very dominating culture of publish or perish, and that has been detrimental to China's innovation. As we deem it, and it is to be addressed by this document. And homogeneous indicators and over quantification, and more severely utilitarianism. Because if you are a researcher, when you are doing research, and you are not really looking at the final results of your work, but you're looking at how many SCI papers I can publish. Okay, how much points I can get, okay, from the grading system in my university. So the quantification or the over quantified system has somehow restrained the potential of Chinese researchers for a long time. So they have become really utilitarian in terms of carrying out research. And ST achievements transformation are marginalized because of that. Because once the achievements are done, once the papers are published, the job is done. Okay, they have no more incentive to really turn their results, turn their achievements into a company, into a patent. Paper is everything, because they have already got what they want, such as to upgrade from an associate professor to a full professor, and that's a job done. So they have no incentive to transform their achievements. And policies addressing the problem have been published actually already. I remember clearly that earlier this year, a document co-published by the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Science and Technology addressed that problem specifically, but the response from the Chinese university teachers and researchers are like, yes, you say you don't want us to look at STI papers anymore, but what do we use to evaluate? There has been a vacuum of standard, a void of of grading criteria, okay, during that period. So the background of this document is to tell or to answer that question. Now, here is what we look at to address, okay, your concern. Here is what we use to evaluate the system. So I say this because I think it's a response to frontline researchers, basically to answer 4 questions: what to evaluate, who to evaluate, how to evaluate, and how to use. In this, you can sense that the Chinese documents are very responsive. So whenever there is a problem, the policymakers will try to address that problem. It's like a troubleshooting process. So maybe that would explain why the number of documents are just massive. Okay, if you really have a database of Chinese documents, okay, I think it's gonna surprise you by its number. Let's begin with what to evaluate. The latest document categorized ST achievements into 5 different categories, and the value to be addressed, to be evaluated, are also into those 5 broad categories: scientific value, technological value, economic value, and social value, and cultural value. This is a milestone because in the past, when it comes to evaluating any ST achievement in China, it's really confusing and it's really blurry, because nobody can tell exactly what to evaluate. So the document tries to address this question by telling you, okay, this is what we look at, this is what we evaluate in terms of ST achievement. First of all, scientific value. It mainly looks at novelty and uniqueness. So for example, maybe you have heard about that China has been a first mover in quantum technology. So if your ST achievement is as novel as the idea of quantum entanglement, okay, which is a physical phenomenon that showcases, the kind of unexplained relationship between 2 quantum, that is very novel. Okay, so if you have achievement like that, it is really high in ST value. But remember or notice the economic value of that achievement may not be high yet, but its novelty and its uniqueness is enough to demonstrate its scientific value. And secondly, technological value. So mainly looking at problem-solving effectiveness. China has produced many products, in particular industrial products, but one thing China hasn't yet been able to produce is flight engine. So if you could somehow overcome the complexity of producing and making a durable and a reliable flight engine to kind of break the monopoly of US companies like Boeing, that is very effective in terms of solving our problem. So your achievement is high in terms of technological value. Okay, that is the second criteria. Now, economic value, which means your achievement may not be so novel or technological, but it could be changed into something high, or it would revolutionize the whole industry. The example I can think of is like the hydrogen power, because I think the whole world now is having issues. It's having an issue with carbon neutrality and carbon decarbonization. So if you can solve a problem, or if you can somehow invent a method that could be used to transport liquidated, say, hydrogen, okay, then that would be very promising, okay, in terms of its industrial prospect, because many countries, including China, is now having a headache that how do we transport, okay, the liquidated hydrogen as a green energy. And social value means the product or the achievement may not be high in novelty in terms of technological technology in economic value, but it has a very important value in caring for the public. A very good example will be vaccine. Vaccine is now provided for free in most of the countries. Okay, so it doesn't really produce much economic value, but the social value is high because it saves people's lives. In China, we've been developing our own vaccines, okay, with a different technical route from that of the Western countries, and that is high in social value. And in the end, cultural value, a very famous ST project or ST equipment in China is called FAST. In China's Guizhou province, it's like a giant telescope that is used to capture and sense the gravitational wave from the universe. When it was first introduced, okay, it was mainly seen as a scientific a tool, but it turned out to become a tourist attraction now, because many students and young people now go to this place in China simply because they are interested in science. Okay, so the cultural value of that is now very high, which somehow came out to be rather surprised for the earlier constructors and designer of this project. So the 5 values are clearly listed in the document. So from now on, researchers no longer have to be worried about what to look at in terms of their achievements. Okay, they have the clear idea in mind what to look at and which category or which value, okay, they should look at when they are doing research. And who to evaluate? Okay, in the past, the government is a dominating force in China to evaluate the effectiveness and the value of your achievement. So we'll be having a problem of monopoly, okay, of the government. So the idea of the document is to really decentralize, okay, that power into more market forces such as financial institutions and investment firms. So to let them evaluate the achievement by their financial investment too. Okay, so to reflect the market value through the capital market is probably one of the many ways, okay, to evaluate them. And we're also developing third-party organizations. By third party, we mean it's not a research institute, nor a government agency. It's a specialized non-profit or NGO or NPO that is specialized in developing models to look at, ST achievement. And I think in Zhongguancun high-tech zone nowadays, there has been a couple of such kind of organizations already. they've been doing really well because they have been enjoying, okay, the benefits of the latest documents. And how to evaluate is multiple stakeholders. As I said, government is no longer the only one, so there should be more stakeholders to be involved in this process, and classified evaluation system, and more emphasis on quality rather than quantity issue. So to to try to avoid being too quantified, try to break the monopoly of SCI obsession, because that has really been a big problem in China's universities and public research institutes. And in the end, how to use those achievements. The idea was to introduce some application and scenarios and the catalog to list the possible scenarios where those achievements could be used. So to give the market some signal that those are the categories or those are the achievements that could be having some economic value for the investors to look at, and to have demonstration project to choose some of the Chinese cities to demonstrate the project. One example I can think of is the LED lighting project. I remember like 5 or 6 years ago, to kind of to popularize the LED street lighting, street lamp in China. The Ministry of Science and Technology has chosen about 100 cities, okay, to demonstrate the usefulness and the energy efficiency of LED lighting on the street, and that has been very effective in terms of letting the whole society know this project, and to utilize the evaluation results, so to reflect the real value, okay, of this achievements. So these are the four questions, okay. If you want to read the detail, you can go back to the document, but the document is basically structured in terms of answering those 4 questions. So to respond, as I said again, to respond to the concerns and questions of Chinese researchers. Now, if we move on to the other topic, which is funding, which was published at a later date on August 13th, the guidelines to reform and better manage central budgetary research funding. Before we go into the content of this, I want to give you some number. In 2020, the total amount of R&D spent in China is 2.44 trillion, and half of that is from government, from physical resources, from government money. And among those half is 40% is from the central government. So you can see that the figure is very interesting, because that means now in China, local governments, including provincial government, municipal government, actually are more influential and more significant when it comes to spending, on R&D. Okay, because they are more of them. It's easy to understand, because you have only one central government, but you have more than 100. You have hundreds of local governments. So the total amount, the totality of that spending, it should be larger than the central government. So this document targets the central budgetary research funding. So that means if you are using the money from local government, okay, this document is irrelevant. Okay, if you are a university in Beijing, you are more than often you are applying and using the funding from the central budget. Okay, this document is more relevant to you. So there were 4 big problems, okay, in general, before the issuance of this document, which is fund management is too rigid and slow allocation of the fund and low incentives for researchers and the managerial burden in the process of carrying out the project. So let's go through them one by one. The problem 1 is fund management too rigid. Mostly it's about budgeting. I'm not sure how many of my listeners now are researchers yourself, because the first thing you do before you can carry out any research is to budget. If you are using the money from the government, because you have to tell the government how are you going to use the money. Okay, what are going to use the money for? Okay, so budgeting is really a big headache for Chinese researchers for many years, because it's such a complicated issue that often have deterred many researchers from even applying the project. Okay, let's just look at the old item subjects, okay, to have a sense how complex it is. So in the past, when you are budgeting, when you are trying to demonstrate what you're going to do with the money, you have to put them into 9 categories of items, such as equipment cost, managerial material cost, testing cost, field cost, publication or IP cost, travel conference cost, labor cost, consultation cost, and other costs. So it's far too complex. To address this issue, the latest document has streamlined them into 3 broader categories, namely equipment costs, operating expenses, and labor costs. That's a massive relief for those who are responsible for budgeting the project. So a streamlined and simplified category means you don't have to spend too much time in really think too hard about those different items. And the other big change is the power over budget reassignment regarding the equipment cost and others will now be delegated to institutes undertaking the research projects with approval no longer needed from departments governing the projects. In the past, if you want to change your budget, if you want to reassign your some of your money into a different category, for example, you found that the money you applied for purchasing equipment is too much, you want to use some of this money to pay for students, you simply have to ask for permission first. And usually your application or your request is rejected for various reasons. Okay, so the power now is not with the money issuers anymore governing the project, but you can have the power, okay, to reassign budget. Okay, that's a massive change in the situation, and the overall rationing system now could be used at a broader scale in terms of the freedom than the past. The overall rationing system means you simply don't have to budget anymore. Okay, you just give me a number, how much money you want to this project. Okay, and I trust you. I give you this amount of money, and then you do the research yourself with this amount of money, and any money left, okay, and you have to tell me, okay, how have you been using the money for, and what kind of achievements you have. So there is a big amount of trust, but the overall rationing system was firstly only used at some project institutions in China, but the latest document says it will be expanded, okay, to more programs and more institutions in China. So to have those measures, it is trying to address the problem of rigidness of budget and fund management. Secondly, the slow allocation for money is also a big problem. The general principle is funds should be channeled now to projects at a faster pace. In the past, when you decide, when deciding the proportion of the first appropriation, which means the amount of money you get from the government comes in different bulks and different appropriations. The first proportion could be 20% or 30% or 40%. In the past, it is decided by the government or by the manager, not by leading researcher. But now the leading researcher must be listened how much money he wants, okay, for the first appropriation. And the better connection between project establishment and the fund allocation, fund to be allocated within 30 days of the contractor and the project management agency signing the task. In the past, usually, okay, when after signing the task, the money was so slow that it usually took several months or even a year to arrive. I personally experienced that problem. I had a project that I finished already, then I had the money simply because of the delay of government coordination. It's really stupid, but it's absurd. But that was some of that commonplace in China. So now there is a time limit, okay, for government to give the money to researchers within 30 days after the signing of the contract. And the unused funds can be kept now by contractor research institutes. Do I have still time? Sorry, I've got to finish the last two problems, if you allow me. Okay. The problem 3 is the low incentives for researchers. A big problem is the proportion for indirect funding in China research projects is very low. by indirect funding, I mean those money that could be spent on personnel, on paying the salary, on paying to personnel. And in the past, there is a very, very rigid limit on how much money you can use to pay your team, to pay your students. But now that limit has been somehow relaxed to 60% to purely theoretical research subjects. Let's just imagine if you are someone whose area is mathematics, you don't need much money to buy, you don't need much money to buy equipment. The vast amount of energy or the resources you put in use is people, is human resources. So how could it be possible for you to use the money for purchasing equipment to pay for those people? Okay, so the policy of PRF proportion is to address that problem. And now central level research institutes can draw up to 20% from their operational funding to motivate researchers with full discretion. And then project employees of Social Security and Housing Fund could be included in the subject item of labor cost. In the past, it is not allowed. Okay, you have the labor cost item as a item subject, but you can't use this money to pay Social Security and Housing Fund, okay, for your project employees. And in the end, there will be no limit by the ceiling performance salary totals. For example, there are many government agencies in China. They have a ceiling of their total amount of salary, and that ceiling is to be scrapped, okay, by the new document. And in the end, the managerial burden was very high and heavy, okay, in the past. So the document says we should designate financial assistance to research projects, a human cost to be covered by the research funds. And easier refurbishment it's a very trivial issue, but it's really funny that we have to mention that, because in the past, when I travel to a city, for example, I took a taxi to go to a library, but the taxi driver simply cannot provide me with an invoice. And when I come back, I couldn't claim the money I spent on that taxi. The reason is I had no invoice. So now I can argue with the accountants in Custard that I do not have the invoice because the taxi driver simply could not provide the invoice because it was such a poor area that they had no invoice. They didn't have a meter, on the taxi. So it's explainable now. It's understandable. It's understandable now to make refurbishment easier for researchers. And now combine the technical project completion and the financial completion to scrap project completion auditing. In the past, when you are completing a project, not only do you have to pass the technicality issue, so your project is technical enough, has passed a peer review, but also you need to go through an audit process, which means financially it is also legitimate, okay, to be passed. And now these two evaluations are combined into one step. Okay, so that's again a very big reform in terms of completing the project. And then scrapping the bidding requirement in equipment purchase, and in the end, to travel abroad is to be made easier to differentiate government affairs travel spending and academic travel spending. Custard is one of the first institutes to benefit from this policy, because in the past when I travel abroad, because we had no policy, okay, for researchers traveling abroad, so they see me as government officials, so they would apply the very rigid and difficult strict measures on me. But I'm not a government official. I argue with them. I'm not. I shouldn't be regulated as being government official. So the document clearly stated that the differentiation should be made between government official or government affairs travel and academic travel, to abroad. So going back, if you look at those problems, you can see really there are many issues to be resolved. But one key thing, okay, in China's STI reform, whether it is about achievement evaluation or about central budgetary funding, it's a response to people. So now China is really putting researchers people into the center of its ST system reform. So whatever they need, whenever they need it, okay, government is there to respond to their need, because in the end, it is the people that would produce the final result of this research and ST work. Thank you. That's all I want to share with you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your insightful talk on how China is bringing structural reforms in the STI sector. I've been told that you will not be around with us during the Q&A session. So can I ask a couple of questions if that is okay right now?
Yes, no problem. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So now there are so many.
Before you go, can I just stop? Should I stop? Should I quit sharing my screen? Yes, you have done that. Okay, thanks.
Yes. You pointed out that early on there was kind of early on the Chinese political leadership that had the vision that they want to see China flourish based on S&T programs,
yeah,
so that they can achieve desired socioeconomic progress. So one thing is quite clear, that the support of political leadership is the single most important factor to help uplift the S&T sector in any nation.
Yes.
For developing countries like Pakistan and other Belt and Road countries, so this is a broad question. What instruments do we use to bring in reforms in S&T sector? Given the fact that there are many critical challenges for the developing economies, as often at times the political and policy leadership, we are struggling to provide basic necessities with limited budget and funding. So how do we convince to prioritize that, okay, it's important to build roads, bridges, telecom sector, energy projects, but at the same time, we need also focus and prioritize research on critical areas of science and technology. You also mentioned, so this will be like three parts. What instruments do we use to bring in the reforms? How do we convince the political leadership to prioritize science technology? And the third question is, you also mentioned about debureaucratize the system. So I want to know that who runs the Ministry of Science Technology in China? Are they S&T specialists or generalist administrators?
Okay, I think I will start from your later question, okay, because before I forget your first question, I can answer your later question. Okay, so we are a think tank, so we are affiliated to Ministry of Science and Technology, and the Ministry of Science and Technology is run by the Minister of Science and Technology. Usually, that post is appointed with someone with a technical background. The current Minister of Minister of Science and Technology is Mr. Wang Zhigang. He has a lot of experience as a leader, as being a giant state-owned enterprise. But that enterprise is a highly technical and science and technology oriented enterprise. And before that, it was Mr. Wang Gang. He was an expert on electrical vehicles, who also has a background of studying in Germany. So if you're going back to those ministers' background, you can see clearly they all have some sort of technical backgrounds in different areas. So that is, I believe that is one of the qualities they should have to run the ministry. But that's not enough. I think at the ministerial level is also a political appointment. So their legacy or their achievement in terms of political achievement is also considered by the top leadership in the Chinese Communist Party. And in terms of your question about political commitment, right, to directing resources into science and technology for Pakistan, I think it's quite challenging because China and Pakistan are at different development stage. Because I think Pakistan still has a lot of issues to resolve in terms of infrastructure, building and connectivities issues. So it's a tricky balance, for for the leadership, because when you are investing ST, you are really looking at for the long term, but you cannot really ignore the short-term need, because if you invest the same amount of money to build a road, okay, people can see it, and politically that may be correct for you to win some votes. But if you vote, if you invest in ST, the result could be seen, maybe after 10 or 20 years, and you will be gone, by when it established. So it's somehow it's a tricky, intersection between politics and long vision in terms of ST. So that's the best answer I can give. It's very difficult to answer, to be honest.
Yeah. I think you summarized it very well, and so thank you so much. And so we'll go on to our next speaker. But Dr. D, do we want to take a 10 minutes break, or shall we continue on?
Sure. We can have a 10-minute break.
Sorry, can you say it again?
We can have a 10-minute break.
Okay, so we are going to have a 10 minutes break. So right now, the clock is ticking 51 minutes. So we'll be back.
Anybody who is interested in China's ST system and reform are welcome to send me emails, because I believe my email is I put them on the screen earlier, so you can send me email. Then I'm more than happy to reply your inquiries and any topic and the discussion of interest. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Lee. So we can also post your email at the chat box.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll go off for the break for about 10 minutes and we'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
जिसकी मदद से 2 इंच लोहे की कील आसानी बनाई जा सकती है।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
I think we can resume. So I'll go to our next speaker, Professor Dr. Arabella Bhutto. She is a professor and co-director of Mehran University Institute of Science, Technology and Development, MUISTED shortly, at the Mehran University of Engineering Technology. She is the only certified professional for science, technology, innovation policy management by International Science, Technology, Innovation Center for South-South Cooperation Institute, UNESCO in Pakistan. She is her master's in technology and innovation management from University of Sussex and PhD in business management from Nottingham University, and a postdoc in entrepreneurial from the University of Utah. She has advised various government and state organizations on various aspects of STI policy. And she is going to present her talk on STI policy framework in Pakistan. Over to you, Madam Bhutto.
Thank you very much, Ali Saab. I hope my screen is shared with you and it's visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed for giving an opportunity for presenting that work that is about science, technology, innovation policy framework and focusing on formulation inside country. I'm really grateful to Dr. Manzoor Sumo. In fact, he is always as like a beacon, light that shows us direction, and we move on with under his guidance, working on STI policy and formulation framework. Well, thank you very much, Khalil Saab, that you've already given my name. And thank you very much for saying it, that I am the only qualified person that is from STIC UNESCO certified in Pakistan. In addition, I also had some privileges to work with the recent Ministry of Science and Technology for devising the upcoming National STI policy draft. We are working on it and we are looking forward that will be more beneficial for the country later on. So in order to go on with my presentation context, in fact, I will first talk about the evolution that has been happening in context of Pakistan in terms of science, technology, and innovation. I will little talk about its governance structure, because until unless we do not understand the governance structure, we cannot really see whether what have been implemented in terms of STI in Pakistan has not been implemented, and what were the reasons that why we could not really make some very, very effective outcome when we are looking for the implementation of STI in country particularly. I'll talk about the national innovation system that exists at the moment into the Pakistan, but again, my reflection would be onto some of the weaker areas, because those weaker areas, in fact, are the reasons behind which the growth for the STI has not really been made in country so far. I'll then talk about some key societal challenges on which we are emphasizing at the moment. I'm expecting that the question that you raised from Dr. Lee, and it was about how to focus on different challenges in the country, maybe I would be able to answer that what we are looking forward in a future policy document. Some, of course, future policy dimensions, and moving on further, let's talk about this whole one by one. Well, we know that it's an entire world, science, technology, and innovation. Let's go on into the evolution. They've started from the science, and the main focus was more on the basic research. Well, then with the span of time, the science technology, the science policy, in fact, been given up some more backup from the technology policy. And even after the technology policy, the realization came back that science and technology can only contribute into the economy of country once it will be converted into the innovation. So the basic research was just a science, then was converted into the applied research, and then was converted into the technological development and innovation in a way of a way through which the STI is really the words being framed out. Well, we see in Pakistan, we are not very different from this whole evolution that is happening around the globe, where people have really seen that STI has really contributed towards economic growth, but we are still into the struggling phase. And it was also mentioned by Dr. Lee earlier that there's a gap. There's a gap in China's economy and, of course, in the Pakistan economy, while we are looking to the exploitation of S&T for the country. So let us start giving you a bit history of the Pakistan in terms of particularly STI. And here I would say that I would like to share with you that how many policies we had, but again, not how many, in what policies, what were the major features that if we would have worked upon, we might have been more successful. But because we left some components behind, and that was one of the reasons that we could not really make up into this STI journey. I'll first talk about the report on scientific commission, which came into being in 1960. I'll take a few minutes on it to give you that what were the major features on it, and where in fact we in fact lagged behind, which become one of the reasons of not really exploiting S&T for the society. I'll then talk about National Science and Technology Policy that came into being in 1984. I'll then give you a bit glimpse of the National Technology Policy. Unfortunately, National Technology Policy, which we see as a student of the STI field, a very comprehensive document. But unfortunately, into the context of Pakistan, this particular policy could not reach to the cabinet to get an approval. And because it did not get an approval, of course, it was not embedded into the entire system of country. Well, then after a decade back, then there was a realization that national science, technology, innovation policy should come into being. That also came into being in 2012. But unfortunately, again, the implementation phase that was required for this policy to really make it sure and make it a part of the society, mostly remained undocumented. I would not say that nothing has really happened after that policy. The things were happening in silos. Different institutions and different actors were doing their part, but unfortunately, those were not reflected back to the Ministry of Science and Technology. And Ministry of Science and Technology, if I could not really say in a way that these all are contributing in terms of implementation phase. What we are doing at the moment, I must share that we are working on a new draft, and that is National Science, Technology, Innovation Policy 2021. You can see on the right-hand side, its structure is visible. It's very much available onto the website of Ministry of Science and Technology, and the draft is there already. We have already shared that draft with larger number of the actors in this R&D system that includes the universities, the R&D organization in the context of Pakistan, again with other ministries too. Of during the next phases, and after that this policy I hope would get an approval from the cabinet. Well, if I just focus on to the first report of the scientific commission that came into being in 1960, there was again, as I said, not very different from the rest of the world. We were focusing more onto the S&T in terms of okay, am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Bhutto, you are,
Yes,
but
yes.
at
There
times,
was a little disconnect. I think I'm sorry about that.
no problem. You may please
Yes.
continue.
Thank you. So as I was mentioning that the focus was more onto the supply side, and though we were focusing upon on the concentration, that yes, S&T can solve the societal problem, but the major emphasis was onto the defense sector, the career and status of the scientists that they can use and move on ahead, facilities and resources that are required for the researchers and the research institutions. But this particular document was not really talking about the absorptive capacity of the larger public, in which the S&T is required to really embed, because it's a people, it's a human resource that are going to exploit the S&T for the society. So this particular document was not really emphasizing onto the absorptive capacity in terms of the entire system. So let's moving on further.
Sorry, Professor Bhutto, but we are not able to see your screen. So you can, if you can reshare it, please.
Sure. Okay, is it fine now?
Yes, we can see that now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was then talking about for the next policy after this report onto the scientific commission. Then there was a policy that came into being, and that was about National Science and Technology Policy 1984. In this policy, the more emphasis was on the development of technologies and then using the technology for the societal development. The issues that the S&T can solve into the society were very much reflected into that document. Measures for improving university research were also being taken care of, though it has a list of some action plans also associated with this. Most of them were implemented, but again, partly were unfortunately could not be implemented. S&T manpower was also being seen. Some incentives are also being promoted. And most of the things that have been, again, I would say that's contributed by Dr. Lee, that the issues that he was mentioning earlier, there was about the budget, about slow allocation, about low incentives, about managerial burden, there was also being said and being taken care into that policy. The governance structure, the very first time in the context of Pakistan, was also proposed into the STI policy, which looks something like that. Well, a little bit variation from the very older one. That's the one which is recently existing in the context of Pakistan. As you can see here, that it has different institutions, different different ministries and different councils that are working together in order to create this whole governance structure. If you can see a very closer look, there are main bodies that are responsible for the execution of this governance structure in Pakistan. That is about National Commission for Science and Technology, its executive committee for the NCST, which supposed to met a couple of times, but unfortunately, again, in the history of Pakistan, there was only a couple of meetings being done for the ECNCST. Ministry of Science and Technology, that is working under the wing of NCST, and that is in fact the whole body who is informing and facilitating the NCST in terms of all administrative tasks. Pakistan Council for Science and Technology, and then it has been followed up by Provincial Department of S&T, Planning Development, and of course Higher Education Commission, which has so many universities connected to it. If I look up into this all institute one by one, a bit talking about that National Commission for Science and Technology, that is known as an apex decision-making body, and that has been chaired by the Prime Minister, the head of the nation, and its responsibility is to make sure that all the ministries who are working under the wing need to coordinate with each other. They need to make it sure that most of the tasks that different ministries are taking place, whether at the federal level or as a department into the provincial level, their work should be aligned together for the development of S&T into the society. But as I mentioned earlier, they do not have any administrative responsibility to really take up for. Now, in the second meeting that happened in 2000, in the year 2000, by the National Commission of Science and Technology, their emphasis have also been done onto the technological developments. The more emphasis was done onto the human resource development, and at the same time, that how research and development can be upgraded into the country in terms of, again, coordination, the management mechanisms, improvements of funding. And at the same time, the focus was given more onto the IT and Higher Education Commission. But before that meeting, we were knowing this University Grant Commission that have been revamped in terms of Higher Education Commission. The focus was more given onto the development of S&T people into the society by enlarging, increasing the number of the PhDs and more researchers and graduates into the context of Pakistan. The Ministry of Science and Technology, which is MOST, we also call it as a MOST, that is in fact responsible for developing not only the policies and plans, but at the same time tickling it down in terms of looking to the proposals, in terms of projects, in terms of the feasibility reports, making it sure that their tasks are very much aligned with the Planning Commission. Because Planning Commission again would be responsible for budgeting components, for funding components, and all of the decision making. So the coordination between these different entities is highly important. And we can see that in the governance structure, though we can clearly see that the arrows are directing to different institutions, showing that the information is moving from one institute to the another institute, but somehow, unfortunately, in practical, these kind of linkages has been seen very weak in the context of Pakistan. So the policies have been formulated, the proposals have been designed, the feasibilities have been designed, but it was being observed for the larger time that the coordination amongst even these very important institutions remain a bit poor. So coordination of Planning Commission, S&T organization, that has also been seen in terms of a responsibility to be taken from Ministry of Science and Technology. Then there is a council, which is known as Pakistan Council for Science and Technology. And into that system, they are responsible, in fact, to work as a secretariat for the National Commission for Science and Technology. And at the same time, they are responsible for the assistance to be given into the policy formulation. And as I was mentioning earlier, that we were working into the draft of this National Science and Technology Policy 2021, we had a very good members from the Ministry of Science and Technology and also members from the Pakistan Council for Science and Technology. They are very responsible for collecting and updating the data that is required, so on the basis of which the evidence-based policies can be prepared, and they're also responsible for promoting the collaboration among different national and international organizations. Well, how much has really been done? I think the evaluation mechanisms has not really been seen very strong. And because of those lack of more of the evaluation mechanisms, we cannot really give in certain type of quantitative analysis that how much we went successful and how we could not. But of course, the situation is telling us how much we are successful and how much we are not successful. Then under this Council for Science and Technology, there are different provincial departments, and under these provincial departments, different S&T organizations are working. We can give them a name of R&D institutions because at the government level, we are calling them as an R&D institutions. They're working in different sectors, means there are S&T or R&D organizations for agriculture separately, for electric separately, for different other different sectors like textile, agriculture, electricity, energy, minerals, mining. So all these ministries and different departments are working separately from each other. Then we have the SNT organization, as I mentioned, and the responsibility of these provincial department is again to communicate with the Pakistan Council for Science and Technology, also make it sure that the information have been shared with the planning and implementation wings. They are responsible for the interdepartmental collaboration, but at the same time within different departments, they're also supposed to go for the collaboration, making it sure that they're working onto the creation of indigenous technologies. Moving on further from this governance structure that exists at the moment, then there was a policy that came into being, which was National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. I was already quoted that the National Technology Policy could not become a part of this whole system because it did not get really approved from the cabinet. But then after a decade, it was realized that another policy should be there. National Science, Technology, Innovation Policy, much more focused on the technological development. But again, focus was more on the technology transfer rather than focusing onto the development of indigenous technologies. So again, when we are not really doing a science and technology within the country, it's really difficult to convert it into an innovation. So somehow at the very earlier steps in the development of science and technology, Pakistan is lagging behind. So highlight importance of international technology transfer by saying that we need to buy the technology, we need to bring it inside the country, and we need to use it for further absorptive capacity, not only into the university, but at the same time into the industries as well. And STI planning and management structure here audible now. I think it was disconnect again.
Yes, Professor Bhutto, I think you need to reshare the screen again, I believe. Professor Bhutto, there was a distortion in the connection. We lost you for a while and now you are back again, but we don't see your screen.
Okay, so is it visible now?
It has started sharing the screen. I've not seen it yet. Maybe in a couple of moments.
Is screen there?
Yes, now it's visible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I was just telling you that, in fact, if you look up into this entire policy circle, the life cycle of the policy, there is an issue that we unfortunately cannot really complete this entire cycle in the context of Pakistan. We know that we started with agenda setting, maybe very well documented, formulation went very well, and maybe adoption partially has been done. But when we see that larger gaps that exist in the context of Pakistan for the SNT, that is after the formulation of policy in terms of its adoption and then in its implementation. The reasons may be that the institutes which are working into that direction, they were not really being given allocated funds, which is also one of the reasons being highlighted later on. I cannot say for this particular document for the National Science Technology 2012 that it was not really been given an implementation plan, because we have seen the two separate documents, they also came into being. One was known as National STI Strategy from 14 to 18, and the other document also, particularly for the 18, they was also been supporting this policy 2012. But again, what was happening that the work was going on into the silos at different places, but altogether, it did not really take a shape of the entire STI policy. Ministry of Science and Technology, in fact, has mentioned about some of the reasons of not really making it possible that this whole policy became functional. They said there was no very consistent efforts being really taken care, and the SNT or STI, I must say, has not really been seen as a very important entity that is supporting the entire country. Funds were not allocated, though allocation being there, but has not really been released to really make some of the actions or taking place they were required and being said into that policy explicitly. The Ministry of Science and Technology and the Pakistan Council for Science and Technology both had a very limited capacities, in terms of human resource available, in terms of the infrastructure too. The Planning Commission, though it was going on through its entire activities, the project, the proposals have already been set there, the budget being allocated, everything was going on. But again, there was working in not alignment with the Ministry of Science and Technology. So though proposals were there, we can see the startups are coming out today, the entrepreneurial actions have been taken care of, national incubation centers are working. So bits and pieces, things are going on in bits and pieces, but there is no consistency, alignment, and harmony in different institutions who are supposed to work together under this governance structure was already shared with you. No policy implementation, monitoring mechanisms, because monitoring and evaluation, in fact, make it sure that the work that have been planned or whatever been really identified as an important action need to be taken care of. So monitoring mechanisms were not there, and maybe there was one of the reasons we could not really quantify what have been achieved and what not have been achieved in terms of the policy document. Non-alignment between goals of National Economic Development Agenda with the S&T and R&D project. So again, bits and pieces, everything is going on, but not completely as a complete system. But then I was mentioning to you earlier that this year we had planned to work particularly onto that STI policy, making it sure that the world has changed a lot, and there's an exponentially, the world is exponentially growing. And unfortunately, we are in a phase that we cannot really follow these very extraordinary signs that are happening around the world. But we need to focus on a couple of things into this new document, not only in terms of a policy that we need to come up with, but also we need to focus on different things that have been very much part and been said into this new policy. This policy focusing on support of national sectoral policies, because what has been happened so far that after 2012 policy, most of the different sectors are coming up with their different policies and they're not working in alignment with the Ministry of Science and Technology for the national S&T document. Achievement of SDGs is of course a very important component, and we're supposed to do it by 2030. So how we can do it, we also try to figure it out into this upcoming policy. CPAC, very important project, the mega project that is also being discussed into that new upcoming policy. Influx of disruptive and engineering technologies, COVID-19, and robust policy implementation mechanism. As I was sharing with you earlier, that was one of the reasons, because there was no implementation mechanism being sorted out into previous policies. Unfortunately, it was not really happening. It was not really taking a pace upon. In this policy, before I go on the features of this policy, I would like to also share a bit about the NIS, which is a national system that is existing into the Pakistan, the innovation system, which in fact have four major entities, four major actors which are working there. That includes the government as a supporting institution, but along with the universities where this S&T can be created, can be built up, industries who are the major exploiters of that S&T, and the R&D organization. The larger number of R&D organizations are working in Pakistan, and a few of them are working under the federal ministries, and few of them are working into the provincial departments, under the control of provincial departments. Well, it has these different layers. This innovation system also have a different layers, and these different layers have an effect from different policy documents that do exist into the context of Pakistan, but because of lack of the harmony and maybe an unalignment, the things are not really taking its shape. So I would say that there's a research and development environment that exists at the moment that has been affected by different policies that include STI at the top, the different funding mechanisms, the infrastructures that exist, the higher education policies, the R&D incentives for industry, intellectual property policies, and different laws. Moving on further, the second layer, which is about the absorptive capacity, that talks about the technology and business environment, also have an effect from multiple policies that do exist in the context of Pakistan, that talk about the innovation incentives, the startup policy, and now we can see that this year, 2021, Pakistan has really took up, has some advantage of really got up like $120 million have been really very funded for the startup into the Pakistan in the last year, in this 2021 year. And then we have the venture capital market, the technical standards, technology, regulations, business infrastructure, education system, all these things are contributing into the second layer of the NIS of Pakistan. Then we have journal business environment. In journal business environment, again, few functions are doing. So you can see the industrial policy, ease of doing business, which is also showing a bit growth in context of Pakistan, particularly this year and the last couple of years. The monetary policy, the energy policy, commerce and trade, finance market, labor market, and all these other things have their impact onto the journal business environment. It is then have a fourth layer, which is the international environment. And here you can see that globalization, of course, it's affecting the entire world. It is also affecting the Pakistan. But maybe in the context of Pakistan, we can see the globalization is bringing more of the imported products into the Pakistan, but in return, we are not really capable enough to do much of the export. And that is not really contributing towards the growth of Pakistan's economy. And some other documents, which includes international competition, the international trade, certain agreements, they all have an effect on the national innovation system of Pakistan. If you see again in terms of the numbers that do exist here, we have like nearly 65 R&D organizations, and with 250 sub-organizations that I mentioned earlier, they're working under the ministry, at the federal ministry, and at the same time working under the provincial departments. 222 HEC recognized universities, including both the public sector universities and the private sector universities. In terms of industrial units, we have nearly 42,262, but most of them have been considered as small enterprises, not the large enterprises. So less number of large enterprises existing to the Pakistan. We are spending only 0.24% of the GDP on our R&D. And that is even very smaller than something that is being said very important, like 1% of the GDP that has been proposed by the Scientific Advisory Board of UN Secretary General for the developing country. We unfortunately cannot really make it. And because we could not make it, we can see that what is our standing. Our standing here, you can see that in terms of global competitive index, we are at 110 in 2019. In global index, 107. Ease of doing business, as I mentioned, that yes, we are moving gradually coming up. 108. Then Pakistan National Innovation System, we have seen, but it's less developed and showing a bit of low performances. In 2019, we were granted only 31 patents, but licenses, no way, they have not really been commercialized. Led technological development, and we can see the contribution towards the economy and society is very negligible. Having said this, in this new policy, we are emphasizing to focus on 4 different domains parallelly. Why it is important to work on these 4 different domains parallelly? Because that yes, we cannot ignore the economic development, but at the same time, we cannot ignore the basic human needs to be catered first. 22% of the people of Pakistan are still living under the line of poverty. And that's a huge number. And if we cannot really cater these human requirements, we cannot really think of capacity building into the entire society. And if we cannot think of capacity building of the entire society, again, looking to different factors in terms of using the science and technology for the society may not be very effective. So intention here for this new policy is to look up to all these 4 domains or 4 dimensions parallelly, so that the focus should be given to each of them to sort out what is really required, and at the same time try to contribute, try to create wealth for the country at the same time. So we can see the basic human needs that have been highlighted here includes food, water, clothing, shelter. And we were having a discussion, and energy cannot really be ignored at this stage, which is also one of the very basic needs nowadays. For the economic development, of course, wealth creation is important, but competitiveness is also very important at the same time. In terms of quality of life, well, every individual who lives into the country have a right to good education, have a right to good healthcare, to the safety, to transportation, and for, of course, environmental sustainability. They all have been considered as dimensions for the quality of life. Good governance, transparency, the reforms, they all are very important. So in this upcoming policy, hopefully, we are intending to work in all those 4 different dimensions. That will further be tackling down, it's further be moving down by saying there will be a wide consultation will be happen into that policy document with the specific challenges that we need to even look up into under these big 4 umbrellas. So under these key societal development challenges, we need to define that how science, technology, innovation can really solve these problems into the country. Well, along with this, there are several other policy dimensions, but of course I cannot really talk about all the policy dimensions that we are looking forward for, but the major emphasis is given to a couple of them that I would like to share with you, and they include certain mechanisms which are missing into our previous document, into our previous policies, and because of there's a lack of the mechanism through which these functions can really been performed, the policy documents are coming up, but the implementation phase has been seen quite weak. And what is really required now at the moment is that institutions and mechanisms for scientific advice, to the government at the highest level, that is required to be strengthened both at the federal level and at the provincial level. And here, after discussion, we were also looking towards that the leaders who are appointed at the top places of these organizations, these ministries, and these institutions, their knowledge is also very important to be enriched in terms of STI policy. Because most of the time, what has been realized that maybe some scholars from those who have a basic science as their expertise, they've been working as a head of these institutions. So not only their own knowledge in terms of STI policy, but at the same time, their upgradation of the knowledge is also very important. So for that, the policy document is also proposing that certain kind of institutions should be developed through which these STI leaders should be trained and continuously be trained, so they can start looking the reality and the utility of the STI for the society. Some other policy dimensions or recommendations are also talking about that says establishment of national STI management information system, so that the evidence-based policy making would become possible. As already mentioned, that quantifying what has really been done has not been done under these policies so far seems very difficult. Moving on further, as I've mentioned to you, that important thing is the absorptive capacity, and absorptive capacity will come up when we will inculcate our students, our STEM graduates, with the basic knowledge that they start seeing that science can really do wonders, the technology can really do wonders. And they need to realize that whatever the inventions they will do, whatever the inventions they will come up with, their inventions can really contribute in terms of the economic development of the country. So we are trying to see that how STEM education can further be promoted, not only at the schools, not only to the college levels, but at the university levels too. So the entire education system need to be revamped. In terms of STEM education is really been emphasized as a very important parameter to create the absorptive capacity into the society. Science education at university level, that is also required to be revamped. And what is important here is to really connect to this S&T with the real world social problems. And what do you mean by real world social problems? Well, of course, we can see we're surrounded by many problems into the country. And if each of the students into the university can start looking and solving these problems with their S&T expertise, that could lead us to the indigenous technological development, indigenous solution development. So this is in fact also intended now into the document to really come up with steps are required to be taken so that the human resource that these universities are producing, they should be inculcated with the entrepreneurial skills, with all the requirements that industry people are really looking forward for. We know that world has been changed, and even into this, the documents that are coming from the World Bank, they're looking for more skill-oriented people. They're looking for more problem-solving oriented people. So we need to make it sure that this kind of HR need to be produced from these universities. Well, here there's a proposed methodology that I would like to share it with you, and that is known as a lean canvas for invention. Now, this lean canvas for invention is designed based on some research that is trying to answer around 101 questions. 101 questions that are normally being discussed between the S&T experts who are coming with their inventions and with the technology managers who would like to really convert their inventions into the innovations. So the whole extensive work have been carried out, and that extensive work that was carried out led us to this lean canvas for invention. That is a very much accepted literature there's very much accepted tool into the literature at the moment, and certain projects are also running onto this lean canvas for invention. So we are trying to focus, or we're trying to see that if we can make it a part of curricula into the universities, making it sure that they learn it in such a way that our S&T experts or our STEM graduates, they will start getting this entrepreneurial knowledge at the very earlier phase of their life, so the invention that they are coming need to solve, or they can solve the societal problems larger. This is how it looks like, and you can see it's trying to answer a couple of questions. It's a complete, extensive tool that is supported by a larger number of checklists, and at the same time is supported by a larger number of hands-on activities. I'm writing a book on it at the moment, and what I'm trying to do is to make it sure that somehow this canvas can be taught into different universities. Why I'm saying it? Because as I said, it's already a part of the literature. It's already there. It has been accepted accepted by a larger number of universities too, not only into the Pakistan, but at the advanced world as well. In the advanced world, there is a project running out and that is funded by National Science Foundation. And what we are trying to do into that program, into that project, is we are trying to see that how this lean canvas for invention can help our STEM graduates learn all those basic skills that will be required by them when they'll be going for the technological development and technological management later on. There's a YouTube channel. So if somebody is really interested to see what this, how this LCI is working, if somebody would like to see this whole process of this LCI, please have a look to that YouTube channel for more detailed information. Coming back to our policy documents, policy discussions, some other policy parameters are also discussed in it that include funding mechanisms that can support the entire process, that we were starting from the invention till it reaches to the innovation. So it is going on through the several components, it's going on through several stages, and that stages need research, prototype development, technology transfer, commercialization. It has been supported by several institutions that may include financial, that may include laws and regulations, that may include business innovation enablers. So all of these stages need a different kind of funding. So again, the policy document that we are intending to come up with, they're really looking towards to all these different stages and what kind of funding strategies are required for all these different stages. Policy, again, appropriate forums are required to be established so that they can measure what is really happening in these all different institutions and these different institutions, and at the same time how they can be monetized and how they can be measured and monitored both. The work on the National Incubation Center is really aggressively going on into the country. As I was just mentioning it earlier, that is Pakistan this year, 2021, we can see we have really seen a good venture capitals are working inside the Pakistan. The really startups are really making money. They have been funded internationally and nationally both. And the role of National Incubation Center is very much effective on it. So again, this is also very much part of this policy document. This policy document is already available as a draft on the Ministry of Science and Technology. The website is already written there. There's an appropriate policy implementation coordination mechanism is also proposed into that document, because we have been seeing into the history that this mechanism, the monitoring mechanisms, was somehow being weak, and that was one of the reasons that these policies were not really taking the shape of this whole project. They were not really completing the entire life cycle of the policy. Finally, that what is most important is that implementation plan. I was mentioning it to you earlier that the policy, that in fact this policy plan for the previous policies were there, but unfortunately, as I was mentioned, that this national technology policy could not reach to the cabinet for its approval. The implementation plan that was associated with this could not really be materialized. So again, at this point, the Ministry of Science and Technology, the Pakistan Council for Science and Technology, and some other scientists, we are trying to work with the focus much more on it, that the implementation plan should be associated with it. Well, the question here is that we need to work on science first. If we cannot really work on a science, the technology, of course, would be of low quality. And if the technology would be of low quality, then again, innovation would be of low quality. So it has been said by very, very good experts that science need to be an excellent. So because without science, there may be a poor science, which is leading towards not very good academic knowledge and not very good industrial innovations. With this, I would like to thank you for giving me an opportunity to share with you what I have done so far. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Professor Bhutto, for such an excellent framework of the STI policy framework in Pakistan. Would you be available for the Q&A session?
Yes, I'm around.
Okay, thank you. So
Thank you very much.
We'll go to our next speaker, Ms. Mojgan Yazianpur. She represents the Isfahan Regional Center for Technology and Incubators and Science Park Development, IRIS, Iran. So IRIS, in short, is a Category 2 center of UNESCO, which is facilitating the integration of developmental approach to science, technology, innovation, and organizing capacity building. It provides policy advice, facilitate the exchange of experience and best practices. So she will be talking about science, technology, innovation system in Iran and the role of SLT parks. Over to you, Madam Yazianpur.
Let me share. Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, Mr. Khalil?
Yes, I do. And your
Okay.
slides are visible. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share with you our experiences here in Iran and in ISTT. I'm going to elaborate a little more about the science and technology policy in Iran and the science and technology parks in the country. Actually, what I'm going to tell you is the STI system, the science and technology parks, and also proposing the model for cooperation. I would like to tell you a brief about the country, our country, Iran. We have 31 provinces, and Iran is a rich country in terms of different industries. It is a Middle Eastern country, and it is the 18th largest countries in the world. We have around 85 million population, and more than 60% of the population are under the age of 35. This means that Iran has a very young population. Science and technology in the country has received special attention in recent years, especially today we have more than 140 research centers, more than 500 public universities. We have more than 260 technology incubators, and we have 48 science and technology parks. As I mentioned, we have 31 provinces, and you can see we have 48 science and technology parks. This means that every province has at least one science and technology park. And today we have around 5 million actually university students in our students. So the general context of science, technology, and innovation in Iran is like this that you can see. We have the core of this system is what you can see in the green circle. We have the governance, we have higher education and research institutions, we have the intermediary organizations, and we have the firms, I mean the knowledge-based firms that have recently received huge attention. So the administrative framework of science and technology in Iran goes to the parliament, the Supreme Council of Cultural Revolution, the Supreme Council of Science, Research and Technology, and the Ministry of Science, Research and Technology, that most of the science parks are under the umbrella of this ministry, and the very effective organization that is the Vice Presidency for Science and Technology, who provides great support to the innovation system and to knowledge-based companies. So these are the indicators in Iran, the science, technology, and innovation inputs that are human resources, are STI infrastructure, which are science parks, incubators, universities, and laboratories, R&D and financial support, and we have also some outputs out of this system, which are scientific publications, patents, knowledge-based outputs, and the share of Iran in regional and global scientific publications is acceptable, and it has a good rate. So recently, the science and technology policy has received emphasis on knowledge-based economy for development plans. The country is going to move the economy from the oil-based and oil income development toward the knowledge-based development, and the country is going to strengthen the firms and the knowledge-based firms in this regard. Privatization of major government-owned industries, including big industries such as steel, automobile, mines, shipping, insurance, communication, and banks. Support for products and services of local vendors, especially for those in the high-tech companies. Provision of new intellectual property regulations, support for patenting new inventions. I will explain about it. Even in our science park, we have an office working on that. facilitating a competitive business environment, increasing government R&D expenditure to 3% of the GDP, financial support for startup companies, easing regulation for spending research funds, and many other regulations. So the vision for the country for the year, by the year 2025 has been to be that the country will become actually the future outlook of Iran is that to develop the country with a first-class economic, scientific, and technological status in the region, and with the constructive and effective interaction in international relationship. Actually, this vision was developed in 2002, and they are following their procedure. The wave of Iran's policy can be divided into 3 generations, actually. The first generation, in that time, the focus was on developing higher education. Then we moved toward focusing on research and technology to develop new technologies, to put more emphasis on research and to encourage research among the researchers and university to make sure that the results of the research conducted in universities will be used and will be changed into technologies and will be used in the market. And the third generation, the focus has been on knowledge-based economy. And this knowledge-based economy is performed through knowledge-based companies and mostly science and technology parks that play an important role in this regard. So I can tell you that yesterday, the growth was based on capital and goods, and mostly the tangible assets in the country received their of the utmost importance. But today, the growth is based on innovation, and intangible assets are of the most importance in the country. So if we want to analyze the national capabilities and elaborate on the strengths and weaknesses of this system, we can mention stronger focus on innovation since 2010. As I mentioned, the third wave of STI policy, more of systematic approach to innovation by some policymakers, new institutions for promoting innovation, like, for example, Vice Presidency for Science and Technology that plays an important role in this regard, new mechanisms to support knowledge-based firms, financing for improving innovation, emergence of many new knowledge-based companies, significant advances in research, higher education, technology, and increase in the number of registering the patents. So as you can see, this is from the Global Innovation Index of the year 2020. You can see that Iran ranks is good, 67 in this index. So we have had also some weaknesses, of course, like, for example, insufficient policy alignment, STI, trade, industrial policy, financial competition, some overlaps in STI organizations, some key economic institutions focus on production, too little on innovation capacity, maybe, low productivity levels and productivity growth, and need to further improve business environment. More private sector development and competition, financing for innovation still is, of course, insufficient. So science and technology parks, what role they have played in this regard, actually promoting and strengthening knowledge-based economy, providing supportive programs and facilities for commercialization of knowledge-based plans and programs, helping the growth and internationalization of startups, helping solve the technical problems of the industries with reliance on the capabilities and potentials of domestic companies during the sanctions. The parks have played a very important role in meeting and actually answering the needs of the industry through what they have gained in the knowledge obtained from the universities, and they have played like a linking chain between these two organizations. Especially this role has been very important during the sanctions against our country, and many of the technological needs of the country have been answered and removed by our domestic companies and through the support that they have received by science parks and the higher institutions. Also ability to meet the technical and engineering needs in the country, as I mentioned. So you can see that the technology business incubators and science parks in the country have had a growing trend in the country. Like, for example, in 2003, we had only 17 incubators, while by 2019, 195, and today even more than 260 incubators. The same is with the status of science park in the country. There has been a tremendous growth in the number of science and technology parks. You can see in 2003, we had only 2 science parks, but today we have 48 science and technology parks. So this is the total status of science and technology parks in Iran. As I mentioned, today we have 48 science and technology parks, 260 technology incubators. Out of these institutions, out of these entities, we have more than 6,000 knowledge-based companies and even more than 12,000 startup companies that have generated and have been developed through the science park. Let me also mention here that the success rate of those companies and those startups that have started their activities in a science park or in a technology incubator has been 75%. And this is a very good number compared to those initiating their activities outside the science park. The success rate outside the science park is 10%, while when they are in the park, it is the 75%. So among the science parks I mentioned, as I told you, most of them are under the umbrella and affiliated to the Ministry of Science, Research and Technology. 2 of them affiliated to the Ministry of Health. 1 of them is under the umbrella of Vice Presidency for Science and Technology. And we have also some other parks and incubators that are affiliated to other organizations and also the private STPs. The economic impact of the knowledge-based companies in science parks have been significant in the country. Also, let me bring some statistics here. They have had more than $6 billion revenue, more than 300,000 employment opportunities and jobs have been created by these companies. 700 new technologies have been developed by these companies, and they have had a good number of export rates. So the science parks also have recently moved toward establishing accelerators, creating accelerators and innovation centers. Today, we have 49 accelerators that have been established by private sector and 113 innovation centers by science and technology parks. And the objective of all of them is to support the startups and to help them grow and mature and to be able to gain wealth and help the economic development of the country. So another role I can mention for science parks in the Iranian economy is promoting knowledge-based economy towards sustainable development, providing supportive programs and facilities for commercialization of knowledge-based plans and programs, helping the growth and internationalization of startups, providing job opportunities for talents and high educated people, and problem solving for the industries, as I mentioned. Now, ISTT, our organization, which is the founder of technology parks in Iran and actually the pioneering science and technology park and town in the region. This is a view of ISTT infrastructure. I hope someday you can come and visit our premises here in person in the near future. ISTT, Isfahan Science and Technology Town, is affiliated to the Ministry of Science, Research and Technology, as I mentioned, among one of those 45 parks that are affiliated to the ministry. And it enjoys the support of Isfahan provincial government, industries, universities, and research centers. Now, ISTT has been located in 520 hectares of land adjacent to Isfahan University of Technology, and this is the master plan of ISTT. The mission of ISTT has been to promote knowledge-based economic development by supporting innovative companies, fostering entrepreneurial culture, creating science and technology parks and incubators, and also stimulating the flow of knowledge among universities, scientific organizations, companies, and markets. And ISTT intends to be the key organization for development of Isfahan region by attracting human resources and creating a knowledge-based society within the next few years through establishing a special technology zone. ISTT objectives are industrial renovation and competitiveness, bridging the technological gap that exists between Iran and the industrialized world, encouraging entrepreneurial and scientific thinking in the society, national empowerment, creating employment opportunities for young university graduates, encouraging industry to invest in knowledge development and commercialization, and enhancing interaction between scientific and research organizations and economic sector. Also providing necessary infrastructure for growth of innovative companies and helping and promoting commercialization of research results. Providing value-added services based on the international standards and attracting international companies as joint ventures are among the objectives of our ISTT. What we have today here are the names that you can see here. We have, at the moment, we have 3 science and technology parks under the umbrella of ISTT. We have 8 technology incubators. Some of them are in Science Town, and some of them are in neighboring universities and other organizations. We have also some specialized science park. This is the new initiative that ISTT has recently embarked on because of the potential, the great potential of some of the industries here in our science town. We have established 5 specialized science parks that focus on special industries, like, for example, steel and mining, agriculture, oil and gas, ICT, and health and medical equipment. We have also 6 accelerators and innovation centers, and we have a children's science and technology center. This is what we have today in our science town. The revenue of our companies during 2020 has been more than $200 million US. And today we have more than 580 companies as our resident companies here that have created 7,800 employment opportunities. And they have had a good rate of export during the last year. As I mentioned, many of our companies have been important and have played a very important role during difficult situations and during the sanctions and even during the COVID-19. As you can see, 30 of our companies, technology companies, changed their activities or initiated new activities on combat against COVID-19. And they had the daily production of 52,000 liters of sanitizers, nano masks, and 3-layer mask, and hospital equipment, like, for example, infrared thermometer, disinfectants, also ventilators and hospital equipment, and also IT and online platforms that help other companies and ISTT itself to work during the COVID-19. So this is one example of the activity of our companies that I mentioned that were toward removing the needs of the society at that time. There are also some advantages for settlement of those companies coming and residing here, like, for example, infrastructural and general services and facilities. The link and synergy that exists between the centers and the companies is very important for our companies. The national and international brand of ISTT is very important, and also the value-added services that we provide to the companies. These are the number of settled companies in our 3 stages of pre-incubation, technology incubators, and science and technology parks. Just let me briefly tell you that in our pre-incubation, those teams that have not established a company and are getting competent to establish a company will go to our pre-incubation, and they stay here for 6 months and receive some services. to be able to establish a company, to develop their business idea into maturity, and to form their team actually, and to be able to establish the company. As I told you, we have more than 7,800 people working for our companies today in the full-time and part-time scale. And they have different university degrees. You can see the percentage of, for example, 7% of them have doctorate degrees, the 24% master degrees, bachelor degrees, and others. So you can see it is somehow like a university. We have all educated people working here. And I'm happy to inform you they are both male and female. About 45% of the staff working for our companies are ladies, and about 40% of the managing directors of our companies are ladies, and they are among the successful companies here. This is the industry classification of our knowledge-based companies settled in our science park. You can see the variety of the fields of activities: electronics and control, nanotechnology, management, medical, material, agriculture, construction, biotechnology, nanotechnology, energy, automation, ICT, and different technological fields. We have also a technology transfer office that provides related services to the applicants in terms of patent registration and also attracting investors and bringing the ideas to those interested in investing here. We have also a children's science center. The objective of this center is to make the children familiar with the world of science and technology. The focus of our children's science center is on physics issues, and the school students come here as a half-day tour and work and play with the equipment here. And these are mostly what they have already read in their school books. Although we have been in the difficult political maybe or sanction situations, we have had very good international relations and activities. These are the logos of some of the organizations that we have been in contact with, and we have been we are cooperating with. You can see UNESCO. Under the umbrella of UNESCO, we have a UNESCO Category 2 center. I will elaborate on that later on. We are the board member of the two major science park associations, IASP and the International Association of Science Parks, and also Asian Science Park. We have been one of the grantees of the World Bank and the IDB because of the significant role that ISCT have played in the economic development and the employment opportunities that created for the companies here. We have very good relations and cooperation MOU with EcoScience Foundation and with China Science and Technology Exchange Center, with Comstech and Zhangguancun Science Park, and different organizations that I'm not going to go through details. I would like to mention a brief about our UNESCO Category 2 Center, Isfahan Regional Center for Technology Incubator and Science Park Development, that works under the auspices of UNESCO. We call it IRIS. The contract was signed between the UNESCO and the government of Iran. And the mission of this center is to prepare the ground for the development of technology incubators and science parks in the region through providing consultations, training courses, and capacity building. Also facilitating the international relations among science parks and incubators with their counterparts in the region are among the missions of this Category 2 Center of UNESCO here. The objectives are conducting capacity building, providing technical assistance, facilitating knowledge transfer, supporting research, networking, and information exchange and dissemination. The geographic scope of this center was first to cover the ECO countries, but later on, because of the successful performance of the center, UNESCO decided to expand it into a wider international scope. And today I'm happy to tell you that we provide services to different countries. Like, for example, we have conducted training workshops in Malaysia, in China, in Oman, in Nigeria. We have conducted webinars, technology tours We have MOUs for cooperation, and we have field visits to different countries. Let me take the opportunity here to mention that we are ready to share and to help those developing countries that are looking for establishing science parks or incubators. We would be glad to share our knowledge and experience with them. Training programs and other programs that we have. The strengths and potentials of Iranian companies are, I think you know about that. They are able to produce quality products, having high technologies, export potentials, high technical and engineering and designing capabilities, and we have very talented human resource here in our companies. As I mentioned, we are ready for cooperation. The sisterhood agreement between science and technology parks from Iran and other countries is one option that under this MOU and under this sisterhood contract, we can have collaboration, joint partnership between our companies, like co-branding, rebranding, and producing joint products are among other possible ways for cooperation. Also promote performing technology transfer programs between the companies through partnership and those methods that I mentioned, organizing joint training programs, workshops, webinars with IRIS, ISTT, and other science parks, and cooperation with art incubator in different fields related to art and tourism. Let me tell you that this is completely a new initiative. Mostly the science parks and incubators in the world were focused on technological or maybe medical fields. But this was the first time that we here in ISTT established an art incubator, and we brought the art universities, we encouraged them to establish their companies and to gain income and to create wealth out of their artworks and the activities in this field. Also cooperation between science and technology parks of different countries, that we are ready for that. That was a brief about what I would like to mention about our activities here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you,
Also,
ma'am.
this is my email address in case you need to contact me. We would be glad to work together and to help and to share our knowledge and experience with those interested. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Mojgan, for highlighting the trajectory that Iran has chosen through different science technology parks. And in fact, I believe Iran can be a model for many Belt and Road countries, and we look forward to discussing further. And ECO Science Foundation remains a partner with the IRIS, and we have benefited a lot from your expertise in this domain. So now I would like to move on to our next speaker, Professor Dr. Tasadduq Hussain. He is currently serving as the Dean of Computing and IT at the University of Sialkot. Professor Tasadduq has over 16 years of versatile experience of supercomputing, artificial intelligence, and other IT sectors. He has previously been associated with Barcelona Technology Park, Spain, Cambridge Science Park, Technopolis of Sofia, and Antipolis, France. He's going to present his talk on the unlocking Sialkot's potential as industrial cluster and industrial growth in Pakistan. Over to you, Professor Tasadduq. Can you please unmute yourself? Professor Tasadduq. You are not audible. We can see your screen. Your video is all right, but we cannot hear you.
So,
yep, it works. Yeah, you're audible now.
okay, thank you very much for the giving this opportunity. So I'm going to present the the talk is about Sialkot Technology Park, unlocking Sialkot's potential as an industrial cluster for industrial growth in Pakistan. So the content, the flow of my presentation would be like this. First, I will give a brief introduction of myself, then something about Technology Park, its importance. Later on, I will discuss Sialkot and its potential as industrial cluster. And later on, how we are unlocking Sialkot's potential through our Sialkot Technology Park. So
Professor Tasadduk, my apologies for interruption, but can you please share your screen? Earlier it was visible, I think now it's off.
Hope so. It's is it shared?
Yes, it works now. Thanks.
So a short introduction of myself. I did PhD from Barcelona Tech, Spain. During my PhD, I worked for Microsoft Cambridge, IBM, and Barcelona Supercomputing Center. And currently, I'm serving University of Sialkot as a professor. So in academia, my main focus is to enhance the quality of education by inculcating outcome-based education. In order to prove my academic, I published more than 80 articles in reputed journals and conference. I won in the last 5 years. I won more than 16 million of research funding. And I developed different labs such as supercomputing and artificial intelligence lab, computer vision, and parallel programming. So I have more than 16 years of experience. The main thing that relates to my experience here, I would like to share that I worked more than 9 years in Barcelona Science Park, Spain, and I have experience of Cambridge Science Park, where I spent more than 1 year. And I spent 2 years in Technopolis, Sofia Antipolis. So I have a practical working experience in these regions and in these areas. And with this experience, I developed different projects for national and international industries, as well as I won more than 30 billions of Pak rupees funding from industries. So these are some of my recent projects which are related to healthcare, science and technology, and electrical vehicle related projects. So now I would like to share why do we need technology park? Although my colleagues have explained policies very well, so I would like to take less time there, but I would like to share how mankind has get that progress. First, they transform the material into materials, and they did the progress. Later on, that we call it industrial revolution, we designed different power oriented machines, and then in second revolution they were converted into steam or power engines to automate it. But nowadays we are going towards the fourth industrial revolution, that is integration of science, computing, information, and technology. And but we are also calling it the fourth revolution is also linking with the ecosystem based led transformation that is based on technology parks. Without technology parks and the future, we believe that the future progress would not be possible. And so in these technology parks, we have to take the ideas, apply policies, and perform some give some capacity buildings to solve the local and national problems. So as you already know that there are more than 700 technology parks, and they are earning more than 3 billion revenue. So although with these importance, there are a lot of challenges that we have to consider while we have to tackle these challenges. For example, role of government plays an important role. So government has to decide which R&D activities should be funded based on the local need and industrial need. Management of technology park also plays an important role. They coordinate with different stakeholders, R&D, talent, capital, and infrastructure related thing. Otherwise, we have seen that most of the technology park, especially in Pakistan, they are converted into real estate businesses due to non-managerial or focused from the management side. The third thing is we need successful collaboration with the stakeholders as well as collaborators of the technology park or tenants of the technology park. And we also need to take care that the tenants should collaborate with each other, and they solve different problems based on their expertise. So now, a short introduction of Sialkot. Sialkot is a country, sorry, city having more than 7,000 industries, and most of the industries are producing sports goods. Almost all kind of sports are manufactured here, and they are exporting it into the different countries like as USA, Europe, European countries, Africa, Central Asia, and Middle East. And they have surgical, they are also manufacturing surgical and cutlery and other products. And they are earning 2.5 billions of USD in the form of by exporting these products. The potential of Sialkot is they have sustainable industry for the last 3 generations, and they are working with the world leading brands. And they have 3 layers of cluster from makers, small factories to large factories, as well as they have an ecosystem that includes raw material, finished goods, and logistics supply. And they are emerging the corporate culture, and they have developed big institutes like airport and AirSial airline and a Dryport. And the problems faced by the Sialkot industries are they are not having their own brands. They are lacking e-commerce skills. One of the example I would like to share that Sialkot produces more than 90% of global surgical supplies, but the Sialkot industry only sells 4.5 million, earns 4.5 million. The rest of the economy goes to the international suppliers. They rebrand it and resold it with 18 billions of US amount. So the branding and e-commerce skills are one of the main problem, and they have they are not expandable to big corporate. Mostly industry is family-led industry, and they have foreign dependencies in the form of raw material. And the last and important thing, they have not state-of-the-art technology that is automizing the previously installed industry. So how we are here as a Sialkot Technology Park, we are unlocking its potential and trying to improve the growth of the Sialkot industry. So we developed Sialkot Technology Park in May 2021, and our vision is developing Sialkot as an innovative district. And the mission is to increase the growth, providing an ecosystem for 10x growth of Sialkot. So our target is to increase the export of Sialkot from 2.5 billion to 25 billion. So we are focusing on major startups by providing incubation, training, mentors, and investing in potential businesses. We are also providing legal and financial services, as well as lab and pilot production marketing. That is the synergy of Sialkot Technology Park. We currently have academia, a consortium where we have more than 10 universities, 10 local universities and 1 international universities that are part of our academic consortium. We are targeting with different national and international funding agencies, are linking with them, and we have applied funding grants with them. We have international collaborator, including Barcelona Supercomputing Center, University of Valenciennes, and New Zealand Center of Chiropractic. Whereas we are providing support services in the form of business incubation center. So the expertise of Sialkot Technology Park, as I said, we have 10 plus collaborating universities. We have established 4 state-of-the-art research and development lab, including high performance computing center, where we are targeting indigenous computing and providing indigenous computing resources. We have healthcare and rehabilitation center, mechanical simulation and modeling, and electrical engineering. We have a research team of 10 plus PhDs and 30 engineers and developers. Currently, we are collaborated with Barcelona Supercomputing Center, Spain, Center of Excellence, New Zealand Center of Chiropractic, University of Valenciennes, France, and Pakistan Supercomputing Center. Currently, we have 10 startups that are related to the biomedical healthcare, computing and IT, mechanical and simulation, and electrical engineering related. So how we are transforming the Sialkot industry? So we have categorized into different steps. First, we are using computing to transform the industry. So in computing, we have 3 major domains. by applying high performance computing, big data analytics, deep learning, or artificial intelligence. So by applying the computing related problem, we are trying to enhance the export from 2.5 to 25 billion. And currently we are giving e-commerce support to the vendorship, different industrial vendors, and so that they can brand their product and they can sell directly to the international market. The other thing is we are upgrading conventional production of the industry from a conventional mechanism to IoT based or ERP based software based mechanism to automate the processes, and so that they can the industry can operate efficiently and give more progress. As I told you that sports good is the one of the major export. So we have provide a mechanical modeling center, which provides simulation and modeling to sport goods, so that they can provide produce new products with the state of the art or latest inventions and features. So environmental sustainability is another issue for the Sialkot industry. So in order to tackle the environmental challenges, we proposed intelligent sensor-based system to identify and quantify environmental pollution. We are using basically big data applications and cloud computing. We are developing basically indigenous cloud servers and providing them to the local industry, as well as we have also reserved the fund to plant 1 million trees in Sialkot regions, so that Sialkot would have net zero emission. We are moving towards the net zero emission. In order to enhance the technical skills, we are providing technical skills program, and it include technical as well as soft skills. And we are giving these skills to the industrial labor as well as technicians, so that they can enhance their productivity and supply technicals. In order to connect Sialkot industry with state-of-the-art institutes and state-of-the-art technology, we created a consortium of high-tech universities. Currently, we have 10 local universities and one international university collaborated with us. Here we are discussing different technical problems and related to the Sialkot industry, and we are proposing or leading towards the science and technology related innovative and latest our future research ideas. So currently we have ongoing science and technology and related research projects that are related to the healthcare, supercomputing, big data analytics, artificial intelligence, rehabilitation, electric vehicle, and high performance computing application. And we have submitted funding for these projects to the local and international funding agencies, and each project has some desired sustainable outcomes. So that was the last slide. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Professor Tasadduq, for this presentation. Now it brings us to the Q&A session. So far, I don't see any question. Yes, there's one question. What does technology pass exactly mean? It's named Oppo R15. I've got a general idea about it, and from the explanation of respect, Professor, but still. So somebody wants to know what's the general definition of technology parks, but maybe I can pose a few questions to Professor Bhutto. Dr. Bhutto, so you shared that there are like three, there was like National Science Technology Policy 1984, then there was a Technology Policy 1993 that's not counted because it was not approved. And there's National Science Technology Innovation Policy 2012. So what are the major differences in these two policies? Like, was there any evaluation that, as I understood, that the National Science Technology Innovation Policy 2012, the implementation was largely undocumented, but was there any evaluation for 1984 policy? This is one question. And there's another question that's broad one. if we want to compare India's science technology sector or system with the Pakistani system, because we pretty much had similar kind of political landscape, cultural, and as well as we got independence together. So we started together at the same point, and then there were like two different trajectories. First, if we look at the Pakistan's trajectory, we in the initial stages focus more on developing the laboratories, like Pakistan Council for Scientific Industrial Research Laboratory. Then there are like Pakistan Science Foundation, Pakistan Council for Science Technology, Renewable Energy Technology, Research in Water, Council for Research in Housing, etc. At the same time, Indians, they develop their universities and human resource institution that they call it proudly as Indian Institute of Technologies. So maybe it's my perspective, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Pakistan focus was more on developing the infrastructure, laboratories, whereas Indian perspective or the Indian's objective goals were more on brain development, human capacity development. And now we see clearly that if you look at the top 500 or 100 Fortune companies, the Indians dominate that industry in terms of their leadership capacity, that most of the high-tech companies are being governed by Indians, whereas we do not see similar kind of momentum in Pakistan ecosystem.
Oh, yes, I do agree with your point, Dr. Khalil. And I think there was a point that I mentioned during my presentation earlier. I said the first point that I've realized during looking to all these policies, I found that absorptive capacity has not really been taken care of. And when we say that absorptive capacity is not really being taken care of, well, whom are we going to make sure that tomorrow will convert this S&T for the society? So the important thing is human capacity development is most important than any other entity. Along with this, there's one problem that I was realizing, it was said by some people to me also. When we try to inculcate or we try to replicate some systems or infrastructure, we were borrowing it from different parts of the world. The Pakistan Science Foundation that you just mentioned, it was replicating the more of a structure of National Science Foundation from the US. But when we talk about Pakistan Council for Science Technology, it was more about a Britain model. Now, unfortunately, what had happened that these two different models could not work together. And because they did not work together, they did not become or create in harmony. And that harmony did not lead us more towards the growth of science and technology. So very important thing is that we need to make it sure that our individual knows science and technology well. And I think in the very previous policy, which was 1984, making science technology policy public was one of the major documents, one of the major criteria there. They said that through science channels, through science museum, it is important to popularize science into the society, which has not been said very clearly into the other policy documents. But somehow I could say that earlier in 1984, there was some disconnections created into the system. And of course, political will is one of them, and people are really verbal about it. They do talk about it. The political will that lacked seeing science and technology important for the country was one of the major reasons that we could not really move up. And plus, there's a disconnect. Now, you can just imagine 1984 and then 1993. There's a gap of nearly a decade. And then from 1993 to 2021, well, science and technology could have been seen, at least we could come up like 5-year plan. We can see within 5 years what we have to do. One more problem that I'm realizing into these policies is that we unfortunately could not really see what is good for us and what is not good for us. That may be a top-down approach, or that could be a bottom-up approach, both as well. But what we need to see that what science we need for our society. Well, we are good in saying that science and technology, but science and technology in which sector do we really need to see? Whether we are going to use this artificial intelligence for some sector, or we are going to use any other technology that is, you can see it's nanotechnology people are talking about, biotechnology people are talking about. We know they are very good sciences, but the question to us is where we are going to use this. And that is one of the reasons we are trying to use these technologies into these 4 sectors or these 4 societal problems in our new policy. I'm saying that we're trying to see that how we can use the IT, the artificial intelligence, the biotechnology or nanotechnology in order to meet the human needs. How we are going to use it for wealth creation. So important thing is that we need to see it in terms of alignment from top to bottom approach. We need to see, okay, it's S&T, but what S&T? And for what again, for which societal sector we have to work upon. And again, I would say the problem was not much in the document. Document is well written because it's like maybe done by very good scholars, very good researchers. But the problem again in terms of implementation that I was trying to show into this entire life cycle. So though we are okay, we are good in formulating the policies, but what is next? If adoption is not being done, if implementation is not being done, how we can really quantify it in terms of measurement? And if we cannot really quantify it in measurement, how we can further agenda set according to some learning that we can drive from our history. So I think we have not learned from the history, unfortunately. And we could not really bring it into a policy document for the next phase.
Well, it's quite an interesting insight that we borrowed two different models, one from UK, another from US, and we wanted to, make them work together.
It's more of like a gear that when we drive a car, the gear need to fit together. Otherwise, you cannot drive a car. So that's something the problem. We're trying to fit different systems together, which did not work, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And Madam Mojgan, if you can briefly elaborate, one of our participants has asked that what does technology parks exactly means, although that you have explained it quite briefly.
Yeah, actually, there are different definitions for a science park. For example, the one provided by IASP, that they say that the science park is an organization managed by specialized professionals whose main aim is to increase the wealth of its community by promoting the culture of innovation and competitiveness of its associated businesses and knowledge-based institutions. But this is the definition by IASP. But I would like, as our friend has asked, a simple definition to tell you that, when universities train students and professionals, and they will bring knowledge to the students. When a student is graduated from a university, this is now the start of what he or she can do. Usually the students are going to be looking for being employed by public organizations, by government organizations, and different organizations. They rarely go to start their own business. Science parks and science and technology parks are the places that help these students to do their own businesses. They will provide them different supports, different trainings, and different consultations. As I mentioned, in Science Park, they will learn how to form a team, how to work together, how to register a company, how to define a business idea, and they learn and know about the needs of the market, how to develop and different things. So they will form a team, they establish a company, and they will come into a science park or its incubator. They will receive some services like trainings, consultations, mentoring. They will take care about, and they will be successful to do their own business, to create and to develop a product and to gain wealth and income out of that technological idea that they have brought into maturity, and they have changed it into a technological product. I hope I have answered his question in simple words.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mojgan. Dr. D, so can we go for concluding remarks by Professor Dandan?
Maybe you can give a Google first and wait a few minutes. Very, very fast, very soon.
Sorry, can you say it again?
She's coming here very soon. You can give a Google first.
Okay, so we have a little more time. So, Madam Dr. Arabella Bhutto, so you talked about that we do not look at that what kind of, or we do not customize the need for science technology for our own needs and the purposes that we require. That's what we in STI policy term, they use it, technology for sighting or forecasting, and that's where you assess that what specific technologies are needed for, particularly in the nation specific purposes or the goals. and then you develop the streams of knowledge development and provide industry the similar kind of support so that the foresighting that you have developed. Atiq Saab, aapki awaaz aa rahi hai, so you can please mute yourself. So my question is how this foresighting helps in understanding that the needs, the particular needs for the countries are met, and whether in the current policy, the 2021, that is the draft, are we undertaking any foresighting activity?
Yes. Well, I think the four societal sectors I've already mentioned in that presentation. It was about the human needs, the economic development, the quality of life, and of course, the transparent governance. So I think all these components have been taken care in a way that, again, I would say that is connected. So what is important here is to connect these components together and try to see that how different ministries, when they are working in silos, can be connected, though the governance structure already exists. And we can see that under Ministry of Science and Technology, other disciplines, other ministries are there. One unfortunate event that has been happening again since ages is about missing of NCST in terms of its full presence. The National Commission for Science and Technology, in fact, supposed to meet very regularly. And when they are meeting regularly into their EC, we call it like EC NCST, that's an executive committee, they're supposed to go for frequent meeting. And that is a place where different ministries can want to work together, sit together, and they can work in harmony. Now, what is happening, unfortunately, that if we are seeing Ministry for Agriculture, the agriculture work, they are working in isolation. If we see IT, they are working in isolation. Now it's an energy, renewable energy technology, all policies that came into being. So we have very good policy documents. The drafts are very much there and they're very much aligned with all this STI policy evolution that is happening all around the world. Unfortunately, they're disconnected from each other. And I think the major reason is the lack of this functionality of NCST in terms of their regular meetings. If EC NCST may be happening frequently, then there will be a place where different ministers can sit together, they can talk to each other, they can say, this is a domain where we are working. And let's see how this IT can be beneficial for the agriculture sector. Then they can say how this biotechnology can be beneficial for the agriculture sector. Or maybe how these different sectors can work in harmony with each other to inculcate more of a technology into different societal domains. This is something is missing. I think we are trying to work very hard, but there's more of like a redundancy. The Higher Education Commission is coming up with same kind of proposals and projects. The Planning Commission may be approving different kind of proposals from different entities. Unfortunately, again, maybe more of redundancy. We are a very poor country. We have a very limited budget. And if we are not really spending our budget with more of seeing or doing a foresight, what would happen that we may be reinventing the wheel most of the time. And this is unfortunately what is happening. I mentioned already that startups are real doing wonders nowadays. Pakistan this year really got good amount of funding for their startups, but it's just a beginning. And I see the role of national incubation centers very effective here. So science and technology parks, are there really science technology parks in the country as been we seen in China or in the Iran or Isfahan? Our science technology park, is it really doing that much? If it's not doing that much, who can quantify? Who can monitor? Who can evaluate? Now, these are big questions which are required to be answered first. And I think these policy documents, if they will come up with a very extensive implementation plan, hopefully we'll be able to answer these questions.
Thank you, Professor Bhutto, for adequately pointing out that the plan is adequate, but the synergy among different actors is still missing. And I hope that with your contribution, your inputs to the ministry and the other relevant stakeholders, we might get on a track that is efficient and productive, and that we get the desired synergy that we have expected. So this brings us to the concluding remarks by Professor Shu Dandan. And she is the Vice President of Beijing Technology and Business University. Over to you, Madam Shu.
尊敬的曼泽尔·侯赛因·索莫勒主席，尊敬的各位专家、各国线上线下的朋友们，大家好！感谢大家参加北京工商大学。感谢大家参加北京工商大学和经济合作组织科学基金会共同举办的第4期联合培训。
Dear President Mansour Hossain Samora, distinguished experts, friends online and offline from all over the world, thank you for participating in the 4th joint training organized by BTBU and the ECOSF.
北京工商大学具有70多年的办学历史，是北京市重点建设的高水平研究型大学。2020年，北京工商大学与经济合作科学基金会在中国科协“一带一路”国际科技组织合作平台项目资助下，成立了“一带一路”科技与经济合作联合培训中心。
BTBU, with a history of more than 70 years, is one of the key research-oriented universities in Beijing. In 2020, Joint Training Center on Scientific, Technological, and Economic Cooperation on the Belt and Road Initiative was established by BTBU and ECOSF. It has won the financial support of CIST Program of International Collaboration Platform for Science and Technology Organization in Belt and Road countries.
至今我们已经组织了4期联合培训，培训了科技工作者400余人，获得了广泛的关注。
So far, we have organized 4 sessions of joint training. There were more than 400 science and technology workers attend activities, which has attracted wide attention.
在此次培训中，来自中国、伊朗、巴基斯坦的专家围绕“一带一路”科技创新政策和可持续发展这一主题，为我们介绍了科技政策、科技管理和科技应用等领域的前沿内容，为“一带一路”创新和可持续发展建言献策，增进了各国科技工作者的交流互信。
In the training, experts from China, Iran, Pakistan, around the area along the theme of sustainable development of the science and technology innovation policy and tools, introduced the science and technology policy, management, technology application, and other cutting-edge content, contribute ideas and suggestions, enhance mutual trust and exchanges among scientific and technological workers of various countries.
感谢中国科学技术发展战略研究院、巴基斯坦梅兰大学科技发展研究所、伊朗伊斯法罕科技孵化器与科技园区发展中心、巴基斯坦西亚尔科特大学计算机系等多家单位对本次培训的鼎力支持，感谢专家的精彩授课。
Thanks to the Chinese Academy of Science and Technology for Development, Mahran University Institute of Science and Technology Development, Isfahan Region Center for Technology, Incubator and Science Park Development, Faculty of Computer Science and Sialkot University, and other units for their support to this training. Thanks to the experts for their wonderful sharing information.
此次培训是2021年的最后一次培训，在这1年里，联合培训中心得到了各国合作伙伴的支持和帮助，我们在此表示衷心的感谢。
This is the last training in 2021. During this year, the Joint Training Center has received support and help from partners around the world, and we would like to express our heartfelt thanks.
明年中心将继续砥砺前行，在“一带一路”倡议下，推动与各国的交流合作，推动“一带一路”高质量可持续发展。
Next year, the center will continue at promoting exchanges and cooperation with other countries, and promoting high quality and sustainable development of the Belt and Road Initiative.
也期待未来有更多的科技工作者和青年学者加入到我们的交流合作中来，携手共创美好的未来。
We also look forward to more scientific and technological workers and young scholars join our exchange and cooperation to create a better future together.
在此也特别对我们的合作伙伴经济合作科学基金会及曼泽尔主席表示诚挚的感谢。
In particular, we would like to extend our sincere thanks to our partner, the ECOSF, and President Menzel.
感谢你们的信任、支持和付出，相信我们的合作会取得更多更好的成果。
Thank you for your trust, support, and dedication. We believe that our cooperation will achieve more and better results in the near future.
最后，提前祝大家2022年新年快乐！祝大家在新的1年里幸福安康，一切顺利。谢谢大家。
I wish you all a happy new year in advance. I wish you your happiness, health, and success in the new year in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Xu. And so this brings us to the close of our 4th session. And I would like to thank again all our experts from Casted, China, Moisted, Irish, Iran, University of Shalkot. And so as Madam Shu mentioned that this was our fourth training, the earlier three trainings on low carbon development, on special economic zones and the digital transformation. The three reports are available on our website, and we'll also develop the report for this session as well. And we'll put the presentations at the annex to these documents. So thank you very much. And if anybody has further queries, you can reach out to me and I can connect back with the experts and give you the feedback. So thank you so much again, and have a nice day. And we look forward to the further trainings that we are planning to organize in the next year, 2022. Thank you. And I think it would not be justified if I forget and if I do not acknowledge the support of Dr. Yuna.
Yes,
Yes, she's the brain behind this initiative of Beijing Technology Business University and ECOSF Joint Collaboration. So she has put a lot of hard work onto it, and she has been the critical part of bringing in the ideas. Who do we bring the next training? So I hope that we'll continue strengthen our partnership in the future, and we'll bring on very insightful trainings in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.